Good morning, folks. My name is Buck Malik. I'm from the town of Hudson in St. Croix County, and I'm the chair of the St. Croix County Zoning Board of Adjustment. It's 8:30 according to the clock on the wall, and today is May 23rd, 2024. We are in the county boardroom in the government center in Hudson. This is the time and this is the place that was publicized for the May meeting of the County Zoning Board of Adjustment. And so I'm going to call the meeting to order. I will ask the other members of the Board of Adjustment to identify themselves using their microphones, and the members of the county development staff that are here and may participate to identify themselves. And then I'll have some more announcements to make. Mr. Smart, you can identify yourself when we get to you. Thank you. Mr. Peterson?
Dave Peterson, citizen member, town of Kinnickinnick.
Joe Miller, citizen member, town of Hammond.
Greg Telejohn, County Board Supervisor, District 14, Aaron Prairie, Richmond Township, and a little bit of Warren.
Steve Smart, town of Hudson.
Jason Cheezick, Community Development Director.
Mike Wozniak, Land Use Administrator.
And Julie Peterson is keeping records and doing other work as our duties allow. So we have a quorum here today. I'm going to make a statement for the record that I believe this meeting was properly noticed and published, that is, put in the newspapers and posted around the county as required by the laws that apply to the Zoning Board of Adjustment. If anybody has reason to think that the publication was not done properly, please speak up now. We have minutes for the board members to approve, minutes of our meeting of last month, April 24th it was. Board members, if you have changes, speak now. Otherwise, we will consider them approved as they were provided to us. Are there changes or edits that you have? All right, they will be deemed approved then. I see, Mr. Smart, that your microphone is still turned on. That's one of the things that I usually get wrong, so welcome to the club. Today we have 4 business items and a couple of elections to do. We're going to make one deletion from the agenda. There will be one matter we are not going to take up, and it is listed number 3 on our public hearings list, the request for a variance to a floodplain for dry land access standards. We can do that. We can delete things. We can't add them under the open meetings law, but we can delete items, and this one does not need to be decided by us, so we are deleting it from our agenda. Otherwise, I expect we'll proceed in the same order in which matters are listed on the agenda. And you've all presumably seen it. I noticed when I came in the room that there were a couple of copies over on the credenza to my right against the wall. If you plan to speak today, I wish you would go over there and sign that sign-in sheet. When you do sign it, you are also taking an oath that your testimony will be true. If you do that in advance, then we won't have to wait and swear you in or whatever before you step up to the podium and the microphone to speak. For those of you who are new to our process, we usually proceed in this sort of a fashion. Somebody from the community development staff makes a presentation about the matter. The board members may have some questions for that staff member. And after we've had that, then we ask for people in the audience who are in favor of that application to, one at a time, come to the microphone and make their statement. And the board may have questions for those people. After that, we ask for people who are opposed to the application, who want us to deny it, And we go through the same process of dialogue with the board. And lastly, we ask for people who aren't necessarily for nor against, but have some point of view or some question to ask or anything else that they think will help the board members make the best possible decision. Mr. Peterson's going to step out for a moment, and that'll give me the opportunity to babble on some more. How's that? A gain to no one, I suppose. We, you know what we ought to do? We ought to hold the election right now and elect him chairman. Oh, I guess that wouldn't be proper. So if you, whoever's making the first presentation, the Coos, and help me with the pronunciation if I don't have it right, contractor storage yard, if you want to move up to the podium and get the audio-visual stuff working properly, that'll be great. We won't actually start until Mr. Peterson gets back. You might have noticed earlier when we were introducing ourselves that one of us is a county board member and the rest of us are not members of the elected St. Croix County Board of Supervisors. Some of us have been in the past, others may be in the future, but our rules of the Zoning Board of Adjustment require that no less than one and no more than two of our 5 members be county board members. The state law requires that each one of us come from a different township. And so we're dispersed geographically around the county by reason of that, a requirement of state law. So with that, I think we'll just recess for a little while until Mr. Peterson gets back.
Mr. Chair, I could take and just do some announcements for you, and that St. Croix Workshop on the Water is June 24th. I think some of you have already signed up for that, but that'll be a good event coming up. Kind of an announcement too, last week at the Community Development Committee meeting, they did recommend approval of the new amended Chapter 12 sanitary ordinance to the full county board for June 4th. The land division ordinance was also part of that hearing, but that one won't be going to the board, and that they wanted to make sure that people had ample time to be able to review the changes. We did not receive any public comments at that hearing on the land division ordinance, so but that will be taken up again at the June Community Development Committee meeting. And other than that, we're getting into the full swing of things with summer and that in our office. So, thank you.
Yeah. Good. Mr. Smart is here today viewing what we are doing. One of our regular board members, David Nickham, injured his leg and is not able to be here today. And so Mr. Smart, who has recently been appointed by the county board as an alternate member, is sitting in a chair so he can get the view and see things from the perspective he will enjoy, or he will endure, or whatever, for future years when he is a full board member or when he is called on to vote. Today he is not going to participate except to watch, because his appointment is so recent that he has not had the opportunity to do the training that board members need. Our role is quasi-judicial, which is a little bit quirky and a little bit technical. There's a lot to know. There are a lot of ways to get things wrong, and we try to not do that. So training is an important part of being part of the county board of zoning board of adjustment. Mr. Peterson's back. It's now 8:40 with the clock on the wall, and if you'll proceed Mr. Cheezit, that'll be great.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Good morning. Our first public hearing today is applicant of Tyler Coos, and he's requesting a conditional use permit for a contractor storage yard in the R2 residential zoning district pursuant to section 15.330 of the St. Croix County zoning ordinance. The property affected is the northwest quarter of section 26, town 31 north, range 19 west. The property is in the town of Somerset at 635 200th Avenue. A proper Class 2 notice was published in the county's official newspaper for 2 weeks prior to this hearing. And the adjoining property owners were also notified. The property size is 17.79 acres. So the applicant has owned and operated Coos Contracting and is applying for a contractor storage yard on this property, which is considered the outdoor portion of the property that is used to store and maintain equipment and other materials customarily used by the contractor. This use may be allowed upon a conditional use permit approved by the Board of Adjustment in the R2 zoning district. The application states that Coos Contracting is a small landscaping and excavating business. Additional work includes building roads and driveways and also plowing snow. Mr. Coos proposes to store 2 dump trucks and some equipment and trailers in the 72 by 70 foot shop building and or the surrounding outdoor parking area. The shop building is planned to have a bathroom facility, which will require a sanitary system. And the applicant has also proposed outdoor storage bunker area, kind of with those concrete block-like structures for rock, gravel, and other fill materials. Okay, some more background is some minor equipment and tools will be also stored on site. The building will primarily be used in that as a shop and also for the storage of the vehicles. And then as far as the materials being stored outside will be again gravel, rock, sand or soil, and larger rocks and pavers and bricks, materials that you'd commonly see with a landscape contractor. There'd be a total of 2 trailers and a bobcat and a mini excavator. So there'd be 3 total pieces of equipment for the trailers, 2 dump trucks, and then 1 work truck. The application says that there'll be 1 full-time and 2 part-time seasonal employees that would arrive to this site daily. The hours of operation being asked for would be that for the employees to arrive around 6:30 a.m. and leave around 6 o'clock p.m. Monday through Friday, with some Saturdays during the summer months. Operations in that during the winter months would not be on the weekends, but equipment will be parked on site for any snow removal business as well. The site currently has no existing well or sanitary on it, so that would be all new. Landscaping and screening standards, there's been a fairly large area that has been removed by the previous owner of some trees, so there was a fairly large block of plantation red pine and they went into the middle of it and cleared an area, but that was the previous owner. The applicant is going to plan on planting extra trees in that to take and screen the building and outdoor storage area from the surrounding property owners, because red pine don't have a lot of branches down low, especially when they're in a plantation style. So we've got a lot of clearance without any screening on the bottom part of the trees. There's also trees planned to be replaced along the driveway of the site. And there's berms used as well to take and screen the open space and to try to reduce sound pollution to the neighboring areas. The unused open area, which you'll see is towards the road of the property, will be planted with native grasses. Of course, there's already a driveway that exists on the site. The applicant has brought it up that in the future, he would like to live on this property as well. So there's no signs proposed to be on the site at this time, but of course, if there was going to be any signs, they would have to meet our sign code. And any future outdoor storage will need to meet any of our standards as well. Any outdoor lighting will be required only in the fuel area and will be shielded or will be directed downward so that it does not carry onto the adjoining properties. No sales will be coming from the site, so in other words, the site will not be open to the public, so no public will be able to come to the site, pick up gravel or boulders or mulch. It'll be only their own use hauling it out of there. Currently, there is some equipment and landscape materials, and that for the project being stored on the site, just in complete transparency. So if we look at the site, this here is the road, 200th Avenue. The driveway comes in through the parcel, and then this area here that was planted in pines, large portion of this pine plantation has been cleared and grubbed, and that is the location of the proposed contractor storage yard. You'll see that the property is surrounded by some open agricultural land and some woods to the east. There's several housing areas in that kind of to the northwest, and also the property is surrounded by a major plat or a housing development on the west side and the south side of the property. As far as zoning goes, most of the land immediately surrounding the property is zoned R2. However, there is some C3 zoning farther to the east on the corner of 200th Avenue and Highway 35. So here's a site plan, and I'm going to try to zoom in a little bit more for you. So you can see the driveway proposed coming right through the middle of the property, the trees and that to provide screening on the east and the west boundaries. The future house site kind of tucked into some trees area there. The contractor storage yard would be limited to the area that is surrounded by this border of trees back in here. So the fuel would be near the driveway entrance. There'd be some parking, the shop, the storage of outdoor materials would be up here as well. And then a couple berms on the west side, kind of split into two, a berm along the south side, and trees as fillers to also provide some extra screening. So here's some photos of the existing site. You can see the mini excavator and a couple trailers there. You can see the red pine to the south. You can see that there's not a lot of cover or screening value of the red pine that are there, just because there's no lower branches. You can see the site here. There's already kind of some berms from the excavation work taking place. There is a little shipping container and that out there right now, and then his trucks are there as well. Still some trees. You can kind of see, I believe that photo is going to the southwest. So it's definitely been disturbed. The DNR would require a permit for anything over an acre to make sure that there'd be adequate stormwater and erosion control. And our ordinance would require that as well. The town board of Somerset held a meeting on May 1st of 2024, and the town board has recommended denial of the Coos conditional use permit to allow the contractor storage yard on the site. The town felt like they didn't have enough information on the actual size of the contractor storage yard being used for the commercial use, and wanted more buffers and berms to minimize the impact against the surrounding housing development that I identified, mainly on the west side and the south side. Also a concern about the noise of backup alarms. So I followed up on that after the May 1st meeting with Ed Schottner, the town board chair. And there was concerns at their meeting about backup alarms. There was concerns about the lighting and just the overall scope of the project and how big is it going to get. I believe the town had asked the applicant to provide equipment list that they would have on site to kind of, you know, hold some checks and balances as far as how much equipment or how big the site could be. And so I think that our conditional use permit application has gotten some of that information that the town hadn't received before. So that maybe helps a little bit with those concerns. But I asked the town if they would like the applicant to come back and go through the process at the town, and they were not really inclined to that because they felt like they had exhausted this application completely. They had a lot of public comment. They spent a lot of time going through it. And so I guess in that they're okay with whatever the Board of Adjustment decides, but their suggestion to the board would be to make sure that we put on appropriate conditions to keep those issues in check if the board so inclines to approve of the conditional use permit. So, and we do have some suggestions as part of our findings and conclusions for the board, but that basically summarizes our staff report. You guys are very familiar with the conditional use permit process and evaluating the request according to the standards listed in the ordinance. And so I'm going to leave it at that, and we can turn it over for public comment. Or
Board
any-
members, do you have any questions for Mr. Cheezeth?
Did the town give you any indication about the comments that they received on it?
Mainly the comments in that were concerned with the noise of equipment, and that, you know, heavy trucks and, you know, dozers or skid steer, that kind of stuff potentially, and the backup alarms early in the mornings, you know, and that was a concern. There was also some concern with traffic on 200th Avenue where it meets Highway 35 too, you know, and that about increasing that. So that's why they wanted to know, you know, are we talking 20 trucks or are we talking 2 trucks? So I think we've got some of that information now to narrow down the scope of the project. But those were some of the concerns that Ed relayed to me.
Any other questions, board members? I have a few if you don't. I take it, Mr. Cheezeth, that the recommended findings, conclusions, and decision document that you gave us, should we be inclined to go forward with this, is intended to also establish conditions, maximums of things. Is that the proper way to read this?
Correct. Yep.
All right, I see it talks about 3 employees. Does that include the owner, or is it 3 plus 1? Do you understand?
And that I understand that that is total, including the owner.
Okay.
So it'd be like the owner with a couple of seasonals to help through the summer months, is my understanding.
Very good. In the equipment list, you ticked off the equipment they have already, and is it your intention that if they were to add any, is it your intention that they could replace items of equipment but not augment the number, not go to a second front-end loader or a third truck or whatever without coming back for approval?
Correct. The equipment could be upgraded, and that to maybe a newer model, and that, but the numbers would be kept the same and that for the size of the business. If the applicant, grew his business and maybe, a couple years or 10 years down the road, said, hey, I really need to have an extra truck, and that, or really need to have a dozer or a backhoe, and that the applicant could always file another conditional use permit application at that time. And of course, that would bring the application back before the Board of Adjustment. We would still go through all the public hearing notices, and that required to make sure that we were following any due process and that we should be. So that would be the process for any expansion.
And that would be the way with dealing with complaints from neighbors and working with the track record up until that point, I take it. What standards did the staff have in mind for the additional vegetation in the berms? When we talk about berms, we normally think of about 4 feet or higher, and when we talk about vegetation, we usually think of 80% opacity within 3 years. But did you have a different standard in mind, or did you think the staff wasn't going to get involved at all in approving the vegetation of the berm plan?
Well, Mr. Chair, that's one thing that maybe lacked a little bit in the application was the landscaping design standards, and that there wasn't a lot of specific information in the application pertaining to that besides the site plan here. That's probably the best information that we've got. But the standards that you indicated there are in the county's ordinance, and those would be followed, and that to the T, and that for any screening or berms.
With respect to lights on the property, the lights attached to buildings or poles would be directed downwards, I assume. That's our normal standard.
Correct. Shielded and downwards. Yep.
Yeah, so that the glare itself does not leave the property boundaries.
Correct. We
Yep.
believe that could be easily obtained, and that with the trees and some berming and then the shielding and downward direction of the lights.
With respect to backup alarms, it's my understanding that there are federal laws, sometimes called OSHA laws, that require backup alarms for the safety of employees and the like who may be on the site, and that those federal laws set a minimum decibel level as well as the tone range in which those alarms have to operate. Is it your understanding that this approval, if we give it as the staff has recommended, would authorize backup alarms sufficient to satisfy the federal law, but not in excess of what the federal law requires?
Correct.
I have no other questions. How about the rest of the board?
Yeah, getting back to the number of equipment, if the owner chose to buy, say, another dump truck or skid steer and kept it at his house rather than on the property here, would he be allowed to do that? Because it wouldn't be kept here on this property per se.
And that, yeah, if it was stored at a different site and they weren't violating the ordinance of operating a contractor storage yard at that new site, and that, yes,
Yeah.
and that we would be only setting the limits and that for this site. Now, if the board was so inclined to say, yeah, we think 2 dump trucks would be okay, or we think that, a couple more trailers would be fine, you guys can take and adjust those numbers and that as you see fit, because and that maybe a trailer doesn't create any new noise, and maybe that's not an expansion of the business, and that, but it just, instead of a dump trailer, you got a flatbed, and then you got a snowmobile trailer, or something like that. So the board can take and modify any of those numbers as you see fit.
All right, let's hear from other people. Is there anybody in the room who wants to testify in favor of this application? Perhaps the applicant, if you're here, or if you brought some experts with you, or anything you want to speak. Okay, one at a time maybe, or well, you can certainly stand together for moral support or whatever. Identify yourself, please, and tell us what you think we ought to know. If you're agreeing with the staff recommendation, a simple statement of agreement is fine. If you disagree with it, let us know about that too.
My name is Ron Belargin. I live directly north of this property. As when you come out of the driveway from the south, from Tyler's land, my land is directly across the road. Being almost the closest neighbor, I have absolutely no objections to this property being used for that purpose whatsoever.
Thank you, Mr. Belargin. Next.
Good morning. My name is Todd Oren. I live at 627 200th Avenue. My property borders, or Tyler's property borders all of my property, all around it. He owns actually the 18 feet on the other side too, if you see that. He runs, his driveway runs next to mine, and then he also owns behind mine, and then a strip on the other side. So I've talked with Tyler quite a bit and was a little concerned at first because of the dust. He's added rock to it. He's done everything he can, and there's no dust flying, very little. So that was my main concern. And then he's also told me that he's going to add trees and stuff like that. So I'm all in favor of it. I'd prefer to have that than actually a big development behind me anyway. So so I'm all in favor of it.
Thank you, Mr. Oren.
Hi, I'm Tyler Coos. Just wanted to go over a few things. For example, the berms. I would be higher than 4 feet on those. They already are probably 6 to 8 feet high. There's a lot of little pines growing on the outskirts of those tall pines. I'd say roughly around 3 feet tall. So I would think within a couple of years, those would be getting up to 6 feet. I'd like to transplant a lot of them that are in the areas that towards the open wood or the full woods there. There's a lot that I would like to move over to there and up where shown. I'm doing everything I can to work with neighbors. I don't want to be causing a scene or anything like that. I plan to build a house hopefully in 2 years and live on the property as well. So I'm gonna keep it nice. I'm gonna keep it organized. I always keep it that way. So I tried to keep the shop back in the trees, hidden from everybody as much as I can, away from the road, and do whatever I can to keep the peace. So.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else want to be heard from in favor of this application? Is there anybody here who's opposed to the application who wants to speak to us? Yes, sir. Did you sign already? Great. Step up to the podium and the microphone and tell us your name and what you think we ought to hear.
My name is Tom Peterson, my wife Char. We live in the Pine Cliff Addition, 640 196th Avenue. Our property corner is roughly southeast, about approximately 40 yards, 50 yards from the Coos property. I'm fortunate enough to witness this 1,000-gallon white fuel barrel, but the buffer that used to be there after they cleared the trees, somewhat representing the other 8 homeowners that their lots back up to his property. Last year, when we received a letter to attend the town board meeting, Township of Somerset, Mr. Coos was there to show exactly the 17 acres he bought and what his intentions were to build a house. And I even personally asked him if he would show me. And he says, all we're doing is building a house. And obviously, that isn't the case at this point. And so this is what's taken place since that. If it's zone R2, just like Pine Cliff, there's a lot of retirement people that even live along with ourselves that are adjacent to this property. And, we witnessed enough noise and whatever going on. He has the right to clear all the trees he wants, but he's already abused what he doesn't even have allowed to do is putting all this stuff over there. Will he build a house in a couple years? The other question is who's going to monitor? You know, what showing up on the screen and all the print and what he plans on doing? Who's going to monitor to say that he's in compliance with all the regulations on if you do issue this permit? And who's going to do that? And who is going to answer to the complaints of all the people about the noise and the dust and everything else? I think St. Croix County benefits quite a bit, along with Somerset Township, the tax base that Hartman Pine Cliff addition generates. And I don't really believe that anybody that borders that 17 acres with their lot, that the thousands or the hundreds of thousands of dollars was been invested in these homes, who in the heck would want to live next to this? It's zone R2, just like us. So why would he even consider this permit? His intentions of building a house, to me, was a crock. He had his intentions for this construction business in the first place. And I don't think it's fair to the residents of Pine Cliff, based on the investments we got in these homes, that we're gonna jeopardize sale in the future, the actual worth of these homes, because that's gonna jeopardize it. We won't live in there forever, but there's no way that we have to sacrifice, you know, less value of our property just because of this. And it isn't zoned for it anyway, so I reject the recommendation for this permit, and I guess in representation for the rest of the people who live at the border of this, so I guess that's all I can say. And for what it's worth, I spent over 45 years in construction.
As he was leaving the microphone, Mr. Peterson said that he spent over 45 years in construction.
47 and a half to be exact. And I've done all of this stuff, everything related to roads, bridges, underground. And I'll guarantee you, in my 47 and a half years, there is nobody going to convince me that they're going to abide by what was showed on this screen, what was printed out. There is no way. And then who in the county is going to check on this? There's just no way. It looks good on paper, it looks good on the screen, but you'll never convince me that they're going to go by this.
Is there anybody else who wants to speak in opposition to this application? Are you preparing to speak on this one, sir? Yes, sir. Very good. We'll wait for you. I hope that was a legible signature. More than mine is. What is your name, sir?
My name's Michael Bowman. I live on 1981 62nd Street, so I'm directly to the west of where Tyler's building here. And the concerns I have are that, you know, there isn't a conditional use permit in place yet. The township didn't authorize one yet there's all the equipment on there. And, you know, if you're looking at things from that perspective, okay, without a conditional use permit, the equipment's not supposed to be there yet all the stuff's going on there. What's to say, you know, based on that any conditions that if you did approve it that were met would be adhered to? And just, you know, speaking from, you know, working for small businesses myself, you know, if he doesn't want to grow, that's fine. But normally what you see is businesses do grow. But, you know, as far as the noise, things like that's the bigger concern I have, being, you know, 350 yards to the west of what's going on there. And, you know, one of the other things too for me is that, you know, when he said, you know, trying to work with people, I don't want to ruffle any feathers. Nobody's come to my house to ask me, you know, like, hey, here's what I'm thinking about doing. The township board said, you know, go talk to people, work with people, see what they think, just let them know what you're doing type of thing. I still don't know that. You know, and I've been to 3 of the Somerset Township board meetings, and I've heard what he wants to do, and two of my close friends own small businesses. I applaud what he's doing. Obviously, he works hard, but it's like, other person said is, it's zoned, for residential. You authorize this in this area here, and what does that say? Okay, then, and we're doing hypotheticals, then it goes this, then it goes that. If it's zoned residential, and you want to put a commercial property in there, why don't you, buy a piece of property in a commercial area? Well, commercial property costs more. That's part of the thing too. It's like, all those residences in Pine Cliff there are right there. The people for it, that's their prerogative. I respect that. But, personally, I'm retired, I'm home a lot. There's a lot of noise there, and is it gonna go up and down based on use and stuff like that? Sure it is. But I bought that house a year ago for almost $600,000, and it's like, if I'd known there was a commercial business back there, much less a landscaping business, I wouldn't have bought my house there. Because I know what comes with it. Like this gentleman over here, I did work construction for 4 years back up north where I'm from, and I know what goes with it. And it just, for me, like I said, it's a noise thing. It's like, how do you put the constraints on it? Who's going to enforce it? I've been on that side of it too. That can get real difficult. I used to work for Washington County, trying to enforce things like this. Like, okay, you put this provision on it. How is that going to be enforced for the residential people there? And like I said, I personally have nothing against Tyler. I applaud him. A lot of kids his age don't have the initiative or the desire to run a business, much less work hard. It's not a personal thing. I'm sure he's a great guy. I'm sure, he's looking at me like, why are you doing this? But like, I am a resident there. I don't want to live next to a business. I chose to live there not knowing there'd be a commercial property going in there. So I guess that's the biggest thing that concerns me with that is how that's going to be, and I'm right down the open part of my backyard, and he's right over there. And that equipment is noisy. And how do you put constraints on it? If he's trying to run a good business, which I have no doubt that he is, how are you going to put limitations? He has to go in there on a Sunday and get some equipment out of there or change stuff out. How do you enforce that? How's that going to work for him? Much less all of us with the noise that are all around it. So those are some of the big concerns I have as far as what's gone on so far. And lastly, Somerset Township Board recommended to deny it based on information. Give me more information if it wants to be approved, or how willing are you to want to get your approval? And I haven't heard anything from them, and I live right there. Now, these other people, he's talked to them, that's fine, but he also knows I've been to every one of those, including this, and I've never talked to him about that other than after the first meeting. And it's just like, okay, how willing are you to make this work with neighbors when you know they have concerns? So that's my take on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Woolman. Is there anybody else who wants to speak in opposition to this application? Is there anybody who isn't necessarily for or against, but has something that they think will help us make a better decision?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I just thought it might be helpful to pull up our GIS map of the property so that you can see where these public commenters are from. So that's all I intended to do.
Good. You're going to use your cursor there, that one that jumps around and...
So I believe that we had a commenter supporting it, and that from the house here that the property surrounds. I believe this is the 18-foot strip of land that he was talking about. I believe we also had support from across the road.
Yep.
So up here on the north side. And then I believe in that when you spoke in opposition, sir, you were down here on 62nd Avenue.
On 196, you gotta go north to the southeast corner of that.
Oh, down in here? Okay.
No, move.
62nd T in the road, and then you gotta go east on 196.
Okay. Okay, so he's down in here. And then the last gentleman that spoke, I believe he's one of these properties here, right?
Correct, 1981.
Okay, so that's all I had.
Yeah, well, while you're there, normally we don't try to provide an education in what zoning law is or how it works, but I think there are enough of you in the room concerned about this that I'm going to ask Mr. Chiza to explain how it is that conditional uses can appear in an R2 district. To give you that, so you can understand that this is not a reversal of the intent of the R2 district at all. And then I'd like him to also tell you what you can do if we should approve it with conditions and you feel the conditions are not being met, where you could go to register complaints. Would you cover those two subjects, Mr. Chiza, for them?
You bet. So, conditional uses are an alternative to rezoning a piece of property commercial. And so generally in any zoning district that we have uses that are allowed or are permitted, and that as automatic, that because the property's zoned that way, you're allowed to do that, okay? Then we've got ones that we actually issue a land use permit on, and there's usually general design standards or guidelines and that for that type of use, and that to be able to operate that business. So let's say a bed and breakfast, you might have some hours of operation, you might have some sanitary, the number of, beds or whatever and that they rent out. So that is a permitted use. Then we've got our conditional uses, which is what's being applied for here today. And the idea behind the conditional use permit is to involve the neighbors, involve the towns, and that have a lot of due process in the process of evaluating the request to see if it meets the needs of the applicant and also and that the surrounding property owners without creating a burden for the surrounding neighbors. And so it was brought up several times, who enforces this? And this is one of the nicest things about a conditional use permit is because if the Board of Adjustment approves a conditional use permit and with whatever conditions, criteria to operate, and that the applicant has the duty then to comply with those conditions. And if they do not comply with those conditions, and then it is up to our zoning staff to revoke the conditional use permit. In fact, a lot of times, if they violate a condition, the permit is automatically deemed revoked, and so it's very cut and dried, and so there's a lot at stake for the applicant to make sure that they're following and that the conditions and that granted by the use. Generally speaking, we don't see a lot of conditional uses in that are in violation because of that level of burden that it puts on the applicant or the property owner. And so that being said, too, a conditional use permit is very specific. And so compared to if the property was being rezoned, a conditional use permit for a contractor storage yard is for only that. We've been talking about the amount of equipment and what kind of materials can be outside. We've talked about the size of the building. All of that is very, very specific. We can't now change that use of that business into a restaurant or a gas station or some other type of use like that. But if this property was being requested to be rezoned into one of our commercial districts, that absolutely would be a possibility, because when you have a commercially zoned property, any use that is within that zoning district and that is an allowed use can now change. So now you've got 50 different uses that could be put on that property. There's no due process and there's no conditions. So that's where a conditional use can give property owners and that a little bit of rights to do, similar small impact uses without the threat of what's it going to be in 20 years. Because you know what it's going to be in 20 years, because the conditional use permit is still going to be in effect and it's going to be tied unless they violate their conditions and we revoke their permit. And that if they take and go through and they have their permit pulled and that because they violated a condition and they still wish to operate, we're right back here in front of the board. We need to take and go back through it. Of course, then they're going to have some bad past, and that where the board could definitely look down, on their operation, for that. So,
Thank you. We don't normally try to run a school here, and I'm not going to take this any further than Jason has taken it, but today we have 3 conditional uses. This one for a contractor storage yard, which is on the list of conditional uses. For R2, we have an agricultural resource production user is our next application. That's a conditional use for a lime crushing operation. And then we have one for a campground. And those are all different kinds of conditional uses that are allowed in R2 zoned areas. So we have some experience with this. Nothing is guaranteed to be perfect, but now you know if this doesn't go well, who you would take your complaints to, if the board approves it. Now, it's very rare and legally questionable for a board of adjustment to completely deny a conditional use. If it's, after all, if it's on the list of possible conditional uses for that zoning district, then it's a matter of defining the conditions by which it can be approved, not of turning it down. Although it may happen, but extremely rarely. I can't remember one in my 17 years of doing this. One of the things we could do, Mr. Cheeset, and I speak for nobody but myself, the other board members may not even be thinking along these lines, I don't know yet, but one of the things we could do for this one, which would be unusual but not unheard of for us, would be to schedule it for a review in a year or something like that, couldn't we? We have the authority to do that.
Yes, you do, Mr. Chair.
And if there were complaints registered with the sheriff's office or complaints logged in the zoning office during the course of that year, we could take it up, and it might be a good reason, if there were such things, Mr. Coos, to revoke your permit or to add additional conditions to make sure that things were at an acceptable standard. Did you wish to speak, sir? If you've already signed in, then step up to our microphone.
Yes, I am signed in. My name is Tim Witzman. I'm on the Town of Somerset. I'm a Town of Somerset supervisor. One of the things, a couple of things that I heard I just wanted to clarify was the fact that we are, I think it was said that there's enforcement by the county on conditional use permits, and I appreciate the fact that you mentioned the review. It's my understanding, at least our experience, is that conditional use permits are not reviewed. We have a number of them that are concerns in the township right now, and they are not reviewed and I could be wrong on that, but
no, they're not routinely reviewed.
Okay.
You're quite right. It requires a significant number of complaints and a decision by this board at the outset that it will set them up for review. Otherwise, they're handled by the staff with a red tagging situation.
Sure, I appreciate that update. And I know that there's a shortage of, I shouldn't say there's a shortage of staff, but the community development when it comes to staffing violations is challenged because of just the shortage of staff. The other thing, we were putting some fairly, when I heard the 2 trucks, an excavator, and equipment, I did want to ask Mr. Cruz about some equipment that I believe he may own, and I know he indicated he tries to store equipment at job sites and move it from one job site to another, but I would assume that that equipment in the winter time could be stored there. And I was wondering, I know from
well,
some
now
work,
I'm going to have to, I might have to intervene in a procedural sense here.
Okay.
I do not make it a practice to let witness A use our microphone for witness B.
Okay. No,
I
that's
mean, you
fair.
certainly can have conversations with him on a sidebar and out in the hallway and all that sort of thing, but just direct your questions to me, and if I think the board needs to have an answer to that question, I'll direct it to the applicant. Can we
Okay.
work that way?
That sounds good. There's another project going on where Mr. Cruz, I believe, is doing the excavating for a condo garage development on a C3 parcel in the town of Somerset. And I believe there's an excavator and a dozer there that may or may not belong, because I know he's using it, may or may not belong to Mr. Cruz, and wondering if that's additional equipment. The reason I ask is because, you know, we are concerned that there's not clear definition of what the equipment, there's clear definition of what the equipment is, but I know he's, you know, he's proceeded with things without getting approval. For instance, the storage of equipment. There was going to be a building built, and our building inspector clearly identified that the building would need to be commercially built, and Mr. Cruz has agreed to do it that way, but initially had requested for a pole barn that would have been a residential construction. So I just need to have a better understanding of some of those things, because we've seen some vacillating on, you know, what his intent is.
Very good, Mr. Witzman. Thanks for your additions to our record. I don't deem those things that we need to go in here. If we announce an equipment list, that's going to be the equipment list for that property. And if it means we have to have a sheriff's deputy posted at the driveway to log what goes in and out, or if we have to have it flown by a drone to see what's on the property, we just need to ask the county board for enough money to pay for the staff. But passing over that, that'll be in the hands of the CDD staff. Board members, do you have questions at this stage? Otherwise, I'm sort of leaning on that direction of saying it's 9:26. We've heard a lot of testimony. We've probably got all the evidence we need. We might be able to close the hearing and proceed to a decision. Anything from you, board members? Is there anybody in the room who wanted to talk again? You want to speak again, Mr. Peterson? Are you going to tell us something new, or just restate what you've already said, assuming that we can't remember it?
I would guess the reason that the homeowners adjacent to that property isn't here, the majority of them, because they got to work for a living, based on an 8:30 meeting in the morning. Fortunately, we're retired, so that's why we're here. But again, there is no way that this is going to be enforced based on what he says he's going to do, what was printed on that screen. You have to convince us, you know, these $500,000+ homes adjacent to this, that's not fair. I mean, I'm just under six grand a year taxes. And why would I want to listen to all this garbage going on? And the rest of them that sit around there with more expensive homes than we got, that isn't fair to us at all, especially when we got to send that payment in. And then we're looking at fuel barrels and trucks and everything else, and zoned R2. There is no way that this is fair if he was given this permit.
Anyone else? All right, it's now 9:28, so I'm going to close the hearing on this one. Does anybody need a break, or shall we go ahead? What issues do I think I've detected? We got lights, we got backup alarms, we got the equipment list, standards that would apply to the berms and the vegetative screening, the number of people working on the site, potential review after some period of time. I believe that covers things that we've had questions about at this stage. Okay. 10 minutes. Well, members, do you want to, maybe this is the kind of case where we ought to just freewheel for a little bit and let you sort of make comments that if you think the staff recommendation deserves some modifications, what might they be? Anybody want to say anything?
Go ahead, Greg.
I was just going to say, he's already said he'd build the 6 to 8 foot berms. I think we should state that in there.
minimum of 6 feet. He can go as high as he wants.
Right, yeah.
I guess, the higher the better.
Right.
Sort of like we do with non-metallic mines.
Right.
Yeah, where there's a minimum.
I like the idea of reviewing this in a year.
If you're going to mumble, I'm going to close the room.
Mr. Chair, and that, sorry to interrupt in that, but I think it is important to also bring up a recent state law that was impacting and that conditional uses. In 2017, the state passed Act 67, and Act 67 basically came out and tied the hands of the Board of Adjustment into approving a conditional use permit if there was substantial evidence and agreement or commitment by the applicant to comply with any conditions that were assigned by the Board of Adjustment. And it was to be determined by a reasonable person. And so I just wanted to make sure the public was aware that the Board of Adjustment's hands are somewhat tied with a conditional use permit application due to Act 67. And, but that doesn't hold the Board of Adjustment's ability back from being able to assign reasonable conditions by a reasonable person. So I wanted to provide that clarification.
Mr. Chair, I just have one comment I could add, might remind the board of some of your recent actions. Over the last 2 to 3 years, at least 2 other like businesses to this were granted conditional use permits for contractor yards in the town of Somerset in R2 zones. The Community Development Committee and the County Board chose to list contractor storage yards as well as home occupations, home-based businesses as uses that may be allowed depending on the size and scope, either by administrative permit in the case of home occupation businesses or by conditional use permit in the case of bigger home occupations or contractor storage yards. So there are other examples that have come before the board is the only point I'm making.
Hearing the testimony I heard and some of our past issues with intentions, good intentions, we know where that road leads to. I would be inclined not to support it unless we put in a full list of requirements that are very clear and not vague.
And do you have an opinion on the idea of a 1-year review?
I fully support that.
Joe?
I'd like to make sure we take a good look at the vegetative screening and that sort of stuff and make sure that we're possibly even doubling up the requirements on it. And of course, approving or endorsing the 1-year review.
So our normal standard for vegetative screening is that it's got to be 80% opaque within 3 years. Recognizing that when you plant a new tree, it takes a little while for it to catch and all that kind of stuff. And that usually means, and that's year-round, so that means evergreen trees.
Right.
They can be supplemented by trees, deciduous trees, but the basic screening has to be there year-round, which is getting harder in a drier climate, although this last couple of weeks has been great for planting trees, I guess. Is that the kind of thing that you mean? Do you mean when you say doubling up?
Well, maybe adding more trees, instead of 1 row to meet that 80% requirement, maybe 2 rows, something along that line.
Let's see, take me over that, Jason. I'm shooting from the hip here, but I'm thinking 80% opacity usually requires 3 rows because if you put the trees too close together, the lower limbs die off very quickly. So you space them, don't you? And
correct.
Is
Yeah,
it normally 2 rows or 3?
And that usually 2 rows is sufficient, depending on your spacing, but it's the size of the tree and depends on how many, or how big the trees are, and that when they plant them too, you know, so, the 3-foot trees and that likely would require a lot more, trees and a much closer spacing in order to meet that occupancy or opacity, level. So, but generally, you know, a 2-row tree planting and alternating the trees so that there's one in the middle, kind of like a privacy fence is built with 2 boards on one side, one on the other. Similar concept for the buffer. And the berms, you know, and that if they're 6 to 8 feet, we can definitely add that as a condition as well. And the problem with getting much wider than that is your berm gets much bigger too, because the trees, of course, would be planted on top of the berm. So,
Yeah, sometimes the berm becomes a kind of a ugliness factor itself. Yeah, well, we haven't talked about this, but sometimes it makes sense for small trees to be planted with the intention that they will be thinned as they grow taller, so that they don't lose their lower limbs. Yeah. Mr. Peterson?
I think also for consideration and thought would be that, you know, this is a case where the residential area was there first. And therefore, I'm worried about the backup alarms. I mean, if you're retired or you don't have to be to work maybe till 9 or 10 in the morning, those things fire off at 6 o'clock in the morning when they open up their business. Possibility, maybe some restrictions on either design so that they don't have to use the backup alarms, or maybe an hour at which they could begin to use them.
Well, those are interesting concepts. We can't overrule the federal law, of course. And this is what we have done in some of the non-metallic mines, is we have had them structure their driveway so that they can travel one way around it. Now that's for the customers coming in to buy gravel or rock or limestone or whatever, so they don't have to use backing once they're in the mine. They can keep going forward, but nothing. Still, the front end loaders and so on have to back up in order to load and dump. I don't see how we could do much with that in this context, in this particular site here. The other angle is to have a later start time in the morning, I suppose, to allow the neighbors to sleep longer, particularly in the summer. I suppose that's, in the winter, people's windows are closed. We've approached it that way, haven't we? Up in the Rivard pit, it seems to me we had different hours in the summer from the winter.
would you like me to go through the conditions, Mr. Chair? Because I don't think the members of the public have seen the conditions identified by staff, or.
Oh, yeah, let's do it.
I'll just run down through it. I know that you guys were provided with it, so.
Yeah, we have it.
So some potential conditions in that the board could consider from our staff is the use of the contractor storage yard shall be in accordance with the submitted site plan and supporting information. So that would take in time to the amount of trucks and the berms and the trees, you know, and that for they're being planted. The contractor storage yard shall comply with the standards listed in section 15.330 contractor storage yard as identified. The equipment storage shall be limited to 2 dump trucks, 1 work truck, 2 trailers, 1 mini excavator, and shall be limited to the 72 by 70 foot shop building and or the outdoor parking area as noted on the site plan. Storage of rock, gravel, and other fill materials shall be limited to the outdoor storage bunkers indicated on the site plan. So there's not going to be other big piles of gravel and stuff outside of those bunkers. Sanitary permit will be approved prior to the construction of the bathroom facilities. Hours of operation, these came from the application, would be from 6:30 a.m. and that is when the employees could potentially arrive to the site, and then they would leave with company vehicles shortly thereafter, and then returning by 6:00 p.m. Monday through Friday, sometimes on Saturdays during the summer. So right now, that would be year-round. So if the board was talking about, changing the hours versus summer versus winter, that would be the provision that we would amend. A sign permit would be required pursuant to the county's ordinance in section 15.380 for any future sign, even though no sign has been identified at this time. The site would be required to comply with off-street parking standards listed in section 15.430. The applicant shall have 1 year from the date of approval of this conditional use permit to begin operation and 2 years to complete the project and complete final inspection with the department. So that 2 years, we would change that into a 1-year review. And then, of course, number 9 with the backup alarms is that the applicant is to comply with all applicable state, county, and local and federal permits in that to obtain prior to the construction. So DNR permit for the stormwater and erosion control would definitely fall underneath provision number 9. Also, with the building construction, any work associated and that would require a town building permit must be completed, and they must follow the inspection process prior to the building permit expiring and the use of the site as the contractor storage yard. And then just a couple general ones, any new property owners of the property must adhere to the standards and conditions of the approval, and that shouldn't be variance, it should be conditional use. Any change or addition in the use of the property or structure or changes in the current project details shall require review by the zoning administrator to determine if it may be allowed. Since this is a conditional use, more than likely, any changes are going to be coming back to the Board of Adjustment and through this conditional use permit process, as I explained earlier. And then just a general catch-all that the applicant agrees to the conditions, and that which goes back to the 2017 Act 67 bill that was put into place. So that is what our staff came up with for conditions. Of course, these are subject to change, and it's completely up to the Board of Adjustment if you think any of them need to be tweaked or any additions or subtractions.
Well, I'm trying to insert what I've heard from other board members at the place they would go. So in the conditions number 2, the contractor storage yard standards, we would clarify that in this case, the berms would be a minimum of 6 feet tall in the locations that are indicated on the site map. That the plantings also indicated on the site map would achieve 80% opacity within 3 years, that the lights would be downward directed. Over in condition 8, we would put in a 1-year review provision. Oh, okay. And on the hours of operation, that's number 5. Supposing that we were to limit the hours of operation to Monday to Friday and 1 Saturday per month. That's tough on a small business, especially in the landscaping business, I think, where Saturday work is a very common thing.
Yeah.
However, I can see, Dave made the point that we aren't taking any more testimony. Thanks. Dave made the point that the homes are here first. In most of our cases, they aren't. It's the contractor storage yard is being built surrounded by farm fields. But in this case, they were there first, and so that means that when this person started to plan a yard, a contractor yard, there were already homes in the neighborhood. Did you want to say something, Greg, on that point? Oh, okay.
I got a
Joe.
comment. Along with the hours of service, I think we could reasonably put something in there on the hours of operation of backup alarms, because when I worked in construction, we came to work at 6:30 and we spent the first couple hours greasing equipment and getting ready for the workday and didn't move any equipment for a while. So that same situation could apply here, where we could limit the use of the backup alarms until, like, say, after 8 o'clock or something along that line.
That's what I was kind of leaning.
Oh, all right, that's creative. Okay, so instead of talking about how many Saturdays a month, we just add a sentence probably that says something about, essentially to say no backup alarms before 8 AM?
Yeah, something along, yeah, that would work.
Are we moving towards a consensus here?
Do we not normally have a sound or noise and dust complaint statement in there?
To be reviewed at that one-year review, you mean, whether there have been complaints about?
No, I think we, on a lot of ours, we always had a statement in there that if the
No more noise in the federal
Development
law
Department
requires?
receives complaints on noise and dust. There was some statement to that effect. I forget exactly how it goes, but.
Oh, I see, not addressing backup lights, but just excessive engine noise. Yeah, that's right, that is common in a non-metallic mine to have a limit, because that crushing equipment can be very loud. Let's see, that noise is usually measured at the property barrier in decibels, right? And I can't remember what number we picked, do you?
I don't either. I'm thinking of the Cedar Lakes.
Yeah, the Speedway, we went round and round on that, didn't we? But that's been a few years ago. So supposing that, suppose we were to do this, we were to put a noise limit at the property boundary, stated in decibels, and it's the same as the one that we chose for the Cedar Lake Speedway, whatever it was. It seems to me it was 80, but I can't trust my memory. But we can look back at that file. And that's a noise limit on everything, beepers, engine noise, and so on. With regard to dust, this one's got, I don't know, it seems improbable that it is a long driveway, but it's got trees on both sides of it, all sides of it. And the immediate neighbor isn't concerned about, he testified he likes the application without requirements. What we could do, let's see, so I'm just thinking out loud.
The noise is what I'm concerned.
Yeah, the noise is the big deal. Well, we'll come up with a decibel limit on that. If there's dust, suppose we were to modify our one-year review and say that, among other things, we will review dust complaints, if any. So just reminding ourselves or our successors a year from now to talk about dust, if there have been complaints. If there haven't been complaints, then no issue. Can you do that for us, Jason?
Yep, I'm trying to type as we're talking here, so it does.
Okay. If you catch the main things, you and I can work out the specific details in the final draft. Board members, are you ready to make a decision, or do you want to table this for a month, or seek additional information, or decide?
I'm ready to decide.
Yeah, okay.
Was the board able to follow my changes here in the proposed criteria, or would you like me to take and go through them?
Please go through them.
Okay. So again, the use of the contractor storage yard shall be in accordance with the submitted site plan and supporting information. The contractor storage yard shall comply with the standards listed in section 15.330 for a contractor storage yard. The berms on the site plan shall be a minimum of 6 feet tall. Any tree landscape plantings shall obtain 80% opacity after 3 years.
Well, that'd be within 3 years, right?
Okay.
Yeah, we don't mean during the 4th year. Thank
Okay.
you.
And then I think the equipment, I think we were leaving that alone, or I didn't hear anything. The sanitary permit, we were leaving that alone. The hours of operation, we left that from 6:30 a.m. to 6 o'clock p.m., Monday through Friday, and 1 Saturday per month. And so I removed during the summer because that would be 1 Saturday per month throughout the whole year. The applicant shall plan workday to eliminate the use of backup alarms before 8 a.m. So if they can come through and they can park their trucks so that they don't have to back up in the morning to leave the site, that would be allowed. Noise level shall not exceed 80 decibels at the property line. A sign permit pursuant to the county zoning ordinance, section 15.380 would be required if they do put up a sign. Then the next change is number 10. The applicant shall have 1 year from the date of approval of this conditional use permit to begin operation and shall come back to the Board of Adjustment after 1 year of operation for a review on this conditional use permit. Dust issues shall be reviewed at the 1 year review. Did I catch everything or the
That's
intention?
what
of
I
the
was
board?
thinking of. Does that sound like something you might want to make a motion on?
I'll make a motion, we approve it with the changes we just identified.
Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, Miller, Peterson. Is there more discussion on it? Any fine tuning, any debate? All in favor, vote aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Passes unanimously. Okay, it's 9:52. Let's take a brief recess here, and then we'll take up the Peterson matter.
couple, good opportunities. We also applied for the
Let's resume here. He's talking over there. You're schmoozing with the town.
Oh, there he is, yeah.
Ten oh one, and we're gonna resume.
We all set, Mr. Chair?
We are.
Very good. Good morning, everyone. I'm Mike Wozniak, the Land Use Administrator for the county. I'm going to provide an overview of the next item on the board's agenda. This is a conditional use permit request from Theodore Peterson in the town of Katy. And I would note this property is located on County N, just to the east of the intersection with Highway 128, Section 15 in the town of Katy. Let's see if I can get our tricky mouse to cooperate. There we go. This request is for a conditional use permit for an agricultural resource production use. The applicant is proposing a processing and production of agricultural lime products, and this would be referenced as a conditional use that may be allowed in the R1 district in the county zoning ordinance, our use table 15.285. I'll note that as we usually do, we've provided a staff report that was part of the Board of Adjustment packet, a copy of the conditional use application from Mr. Peterson, and a email comment from the town of Katy. I'll go through these here just a moment. Oops. Again, the property we're talking about is a 30-acre parcel located just to the east, about 500 feet east of the intersection of 128 and County Road N in the town of Katy. The property in question was a former sand pit, and it was operated before the town of Katy adopted and came under county zoning when our current Chapter 15 was approved back in 2019. Katy was actually the first town to adopt the new county zoning ordinance. Just a little bit of a distinction for them. But prior to that, there was not zoning in this area, and so that operation was not under county zoning. And I would just show a couple photos to give you a sense of the site, if I can get this to sit properly for me. Boy, we got to do something about this sensitivity of this mouse.
I believe I've heard that before.
Yeah, well, it's beyond my, have asked for help.
Oh, really? Isn't it just go into the settings and go to mouse?
The view on this, in these photos, This is looking eastward, and you can see the existing driveway access that was used for the sand pit on the property on the left side. And the view to the right is just looking up the existing drive in the condition it's in, towards the low-lying area or the former sand pit area on the site. There we go. Couple more photos show the low-lying former sand pit area where most of the activity would occur. I would say there is a temporary scale, or a portable scale, I should say, proposed along that driveway that I showed on the prior photo. And one clarification I would make, Mr. Peterson is not proposing any crushing of lime rock as part of the request at this time. He would be screening the product on site, but would not be crushing, just for clarification purposes. The surrounding area, I've highlighted the site on this slide, and predominantly the zoning in the area is R1 residential. There is some commercial and industrial zoning to the west and north of the subject property as well, in areas that are identified for such activity in the town's comprehensive plan. Just to summarize a little background here, again, the property is a 30-acre parcel, previously a borrow pit for sand and gravel, and I'll note Mr. Peterson is requesting the CUP for a ag resource production use, processing, production of agricultural lime products. If the board has any specific questions about just what that entails and what he's producing, Mr. Peterson is here, and he will have a few remarks to make and can answer your questions on specifics. The use, though, would involve importing limestone materials from local quarries to be screened into lime products. It's intended to be a small operation with a finished product to consist of agricultural lime and lime sand products. The applicant has proposed hours of operation 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Saturday. And he's indicated that it's his intent to build a small storage building, relatively modest, at least 30 by 40 foot footprint, as indicated on the site plan that was included in the packet. And the applicant's also indicated his intention to plant trees along property lines for screening, but he has not provided a specific landscaping plan. The majority of lime rock processing, including screen sorting, will occur in the former sand pit area, roughly in the center of the 30-acre parcel, which will help limit noise, dust, and visual impacts to surrounding properties. This copy of the site plan, just a few of the features that are part of the proposal being highlighted here. Areas with where there would be stockpiles of agricultural lime products, an area where the coarse limestone product would be brought in and stockpiled for processing, and where the storage shed would be located, and then also where a portable truck scale would be located. And I would comment to also, this application was forwarded to the Highway Department, County Highway Department, because the access is on County N. And the comment received back was that if the use of the property and the vehicle traffic is limited to what's included in Mr. Peterson's proposal, that County Highway doesn't see a need for any modifications. If the level of use would increase, the applicant would have to consult and probably get a permit for any modifications from County Highway. And that came from Greg Haig in the County Highway Department. In our staff report, I've included the responses that Mr. Peterson gave to the questions that are posed on the conditional use permit application. I'm not going to read through these verbatim, but if the board has any questions about Mr. Peterson's responses, either I can answer them or he can answer them when he is addressing the board. I would note that Mr. Peterson has indicated that ultimately it's his thought to use some of the excess material that would not be sold as product to fill in or partially fill in the low area on the site, and ultimately build a home on the site. So that's just part of his long-range plan for the property. In our staff report, we just flagged a few issues for consideration by the Board of Adjustment. First of all, I know we have a definition for agricultural production uses, but we do not have specific standards in the Chapter 15 for ag production uses. Typically, the types of concerns we would have would be site access. This was drafted before a late comment received from Greg Haig at the Highway Department, so I think I've clarified the site access issue. Stormwater management is typically a concern. This site's very much internally drained with that low area, and the activity that will occur, again, is drained into that low area. Pending the level of site disturbance, Mr. Peterson may be subject to a DNR stormwater permit, and he will have to obtain that if he is. And but I don't see any real concerns for off-site impacts with this use on stormwater. And some of his revegetation efforts should actually improve any concerns over time for wind erosion as opposed to maybe water erosion. Regarding screening and buffering, I just note that the dwellings that are on properties in abutting the site are between 700 and 950 feet from the area of the site where the activity would occur. Plus, there's a grade separation as well. And that could be supplemented by any screening with tree plantings that Mr. Peterson may do along property boundaries. Again, he hasn't been specific about that, and the board, you can certainly inquire what he has in mind for that. This was referred to the town of Katy, and they've indicated that they were satisfied with answers to the main concerns of operational hours, dust and noise. They discussed it at a town board meeting on May 6th and got back to the county with that comment and reaction. And again, I have heard from the highway department, so I'll be more clear that they do not feel there's a need for a permit or have any concern about the proposed use at the level it's being proposed. If that were to change, highway would need to be consulted with. Your options, as you're aware, are to approve the request, deny the request, or table, postpone if you feel any more information is needed on this item. I distributed for you a draft decision document that includes the findings of fact that were included in this staff report, as well as some proposed conclusions of law and a action for you to consider, which would be an action to consider approval of the request subject to some conditions as staff have noted, or as you may supplement or amend. Let's see if I can pull that document up on the screen, because that has all of this. Here we go. And I'll just note for you on the draft decision document, I did make just one edit penned in, and that is under the conclusions of law, there was one reference to heavy industrial use, which actually should read agricultural resource production use. And you would see it in blue ink on the copies that I distributed to you. And at this point, I can go through this document if you would like, or we could wait till you hold your hearing and are deliberating before talking about conditions.
Board members, do you have questions for Mr. Wozniak? Is there anybody in the room who wants to speak in favor of this application? Mr. Peterson, did you want to be heard? Yes. Good. This would be a great time for it.
Well, hello, I'm Ted Peterson. I'm the one applying for the application, and I haven't got a chance to speak to the neighbors yet, and I think that's probably why there's quite a few here. So I'm just gonna say in my own words what I'm looking to do with that property. Like Mike said, this was a pit that's been there for quite a time. It's not a new pit. It's not in the recent 5 years. It's been there quite a while. What I plan on doing is not mining the area. What I plan on doing, I have a background in mining. I was an operations manager. But what I want to do is bring in material that I'm aware of in the area that is not being used and screen it. I want to produce egg lime embedding sand. It'd be products for farm fields and for agricultural animals. So just those two products, lime and sand. And there's not going to be a crusher there. Some of the product that I will have left over is going to be used to fill in that property. My intent is over the years, I will have enough where I can level that hole out, and I think it'll be a win-win for everybody. My intent is to make that property worth more than what it is currently. So I'm not going to get rich off of the egg lime that I'm going to produce or the products that I'm going to produce. I intend to make some money. I will be the person working it, and my son, he's currently 16, he's gonna help me in the summer. Let's see, I'm applying for Monday through Saturday, 6 to 6. I'm just gonna be honest with you, I'm not a real morning person. I like to be up more at night, so I don't plan on starting that sucker up right away at 6, and I just don't need to. It's not gonna be a big operation. I work for my father on his farm in Barron County also, so it's not gonna be my main thing. It's a smaller little deal, and like I said, my intent is to eventually, and I guess the more you do at once, the quicker you can get done, but I don't intend to bring in quite a bit, is to fill in that hole and have that property worth more, possibly, a 30-acre parcel in that area leveled off like that with trees. I plan on doing at least 2 or 3 rows on the west side, to help buffer from Highway 128 to the north. That's all farm field. I don't know if I'm gonna buffer that yet from 94, which I might, because I plan on putting a house kind of on the back east side that overlooks that 94, and then there's a woods back there. It's a nice little spot. The reason why I'm asking for Saturday, I don't plan on going crazy on a Saturday, but the egg lime that I will produce, I'll be competed against the big guys that are producing egg lime in the area, and a lot of them are shut down on Saturdays. So I've got connections in the farming and egg lime industry, and they said if I could produce or have it available for them on Saturdays, that would be a big plus for me to sell the product. The drive that's in is a heavy drive. It was used for many trucks when they took the sand out of there. So there's, the access, like was said, was a very good access for that. The portable scale that I'll be using is for dump trucks. It's not for, it's not going to be a 100-foot scale. It's a 30-foot scale is what I'm looking to get. And it's a scale that can just be picked up, set down. They test it, and it's state certified. That's why they call them portable. They're easy to move around. So I guess that's my intent. It's to actually not have a big footprint, not make a big impact. I mean, I've come from sites. There's one down the road on 128 that has hundreds of trucks go in and out a day. We're talking an average of 1 to 2 throughout the year. So it's a small scale, very small scale compared to the ones. If anybody's thinking, hey, there's a big quarry, I'm not removing material from the sidewalls of that land. I'll be adding over the years.
Now you're talking about sand screening for barn use. You're gonna have a wash plant there or anything like that?
Very good question. So I'm not gonna wash either. So no washing and no crushing. I may have to dry the product, which I might lay it down on the ground, or I am looking for approval to do, say, a small drum dryer, if you're familiar with that. And I would be open to restricted hours on that because it's something that would be ran very little.
Anything else on the board? Anybody else in the room wants to speak in favor of this application? How about opposition? Anybody here to speak in opposition to this application? Thinks conditions should be stronger or something like that? Come on up, sir. Have you already signed in?
Yep.
Great. Tell us your name, please.
Nick Knoppen. I live on Highway 128, so I'm on the hilltop that I oversee that pit. It's well within wind distance of we have a constant strong north wind usually. But then I also know a lot of the other people that are around it. As far as speaking on the Katy board or township, that was never released to that meeting was happening. And they kind of do that a lot where they make recommendations without getting feedback from the community. So I just want to say that's not representation of all the people that this is affecting, because none of us were at that meeting. We just found out mainly by Facebook posts, and then some letters were sent out, but I didn't even get a letter. Those pictures were great, but they don't show the proximity of any of the houses that are right next to this property. I have worked in construction. I've handled a lot of line screenings. I understand, and I don't belittle him for trying to make money off of the property. I understand you buy something, you got to do that. My main concern is I have children. Lime and screening lime does create a lot of dust. I'd be very curious to see what the actual plans for dust mitigation is, and an 8-foot tree is not going to mitigate dust blowing off of a screener. So that is my major concern, and lime dust is a carcinogen. So with how close all these houses are, all these houses around have young children, we're all neighbors, we know each other. That's my main concern is how are we going to negate the dust? Plus we do have livestock and other things, and I know a lot of the other neighbors do as well. So what are we doing to control dust? That pit does look like it's deep. That's only one side. The other side is open to County Road N. I'm very familiar with the property. I used to run cattle on it, as well as knew the old neighbors. So I just don't see with the screening, and again, if you want to make money under the property or off the property, I know what the prices of egg lime and I know how that works. I just put lime on my property as well. On my hay fields, you're going to need to run more than 1 or 2 trucks a day to make anything off that place. So I'm just concerned about the actual level hauling out, how much screening, how often it's going to be going on, how much dust is going to be generated, and what actually is going to be done to mitigate that and protect the neighbors. Because again, I don't think what was shown here really does justice to how close these houses and how these children are going to be playing around this pit as far as dust control goes. So, yeah, I guess that's my main concern. Noise, I mean, noise is noise. We have noise from 128. We have big trucks moving all the time, or from 94 as well. I don't see that as being a major issue, but again, my house is not adjacent right to this property. I have a little bit of a buffer, but still not enough for the dust control, so.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else want to speak against this application?
Yes, I am Marcus Quilling. I live right across the road from the property, and I am kind of concerned about the dust control also, being that the sifter will be right pretty much on top of the hill. It's not down inside the pit mine area. So yes, the wind does come from the north, south, and then west to east and northwest, and basically blowing right into where my house is. And I do have 2 little kids also. There's actually about 9 to 14 kids that live just within about 700 yards of the property. So yes, the dust being on a top of a hill where the screener's going to be is actually going to be right in the wind pattern going towards at least most of the properties. So it's going to drift right over the top of the trees that he's planning on putting in possibly. So it's kind of one concern that I see with the property. And then the possible water issue, because that hole does hold water and that's going in the ground. I'm kind of concerned about the water quality also with lime going into the pit there for fill in. But I'd be okay with him basically backfilling it in with dirt debris like that, but I don't know about the whole lime debris. But mainly lime debris going in the hole for runoff into the hole itself. and then the dust coming into my neighboring property also with a couple of kids, so.
Did you say there are 914 kids living
No,
within
9.
900 yards?
9 to 14, I'd say.
Why is it not 10, 11, 12? Why is it 9
Well,
to 14?
there's, for sure,
Are there
I
fractions
know of
involved?
two kids live on the corner. Nick has 2 kids. I have 2 kids.
That's 6.
Another neighbor has 4, 5. And then there's also a property on the other side of 128 that I don't know exactly how many kids live there. That's why there's a 9 to 14 range,
Okay,
I'd say.
so you got up to 11, so it's 11 to 14 now. And you said 900 yards from the property
About
boundaries?
6 to 700 yards,
Maximum 700 yards?
I'd say, yeah.
Yeah. Mr. Wozniak, could you put us up the site map again, and we could get a sense of where these homes are and whether this blowing dust is really an issue? I assume you want to look into that a little bit? Yeah. You said you're Marcus Quilling, is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're on the list of people who should have been sent notice by the county. Must be you join.
Yeah, there has been dump trucks going out of there for the interstate program,
Construction?
when they're redoing the construction of the interstate.
Yeah.
So yes, there is dust that comes off that road, blowing our direction every time the trucks go in and out. So, but that was, I think, fine, just because it's not happening all the time.
I can pull up a GIS map, but you have dwellings down here at the intersection of County N and 128.
Yep.
Is this your place up here?
No,
Or you're down
right
here?
down here.
Okay, south of County N here. Over here, just to the southeast corner, south of County N, and there's a dwelling, I don't know if it shows up on here yet, on, just to the east, as well. So those would be the dwelling locations.
What was your plan, while you're there, Mr. Wozniak, what was your plan for tree buffering of this property?
Well,
it wasn't specified
Mr. Peterson
in the
has
application.
indicated he intends to plant, but he did not provide a specific landscape plan.
But you would, you left it to us, didn't you?
Well, I think the board has to decide if you want more specifics from Mr. Peterson on what his intent. He kind of gave a brief overview, I think, to you about intent to plant along that west property line. But if you want something more specific, I think you might need to require that or condition it that way or ask for that before your action.
It looked to me like some of these homes are to the east. Did I misunderstand you, or is that map oriented the wrong way?
Yeah, there's a kind of an area that's been tilled that Mr. Peterson has indicated he's intending to lease it out. Is that correct? That's a farm field. Yeah, where my cursor is here, and then again, there's a home to the east here, and then there are a couple south, 2 or 3 south of County N as you head east.
Mm-hmm.
And they're somewhat more grade separated from where the activity is, but I don't want to understate concerns or anything. I'm just stating that's what the topo's doing. That screener is partially down the slope to the pit. The portable scale is topographically higher along that driveway as it comes in. And then the stockpiled materials are, in the lower area, but different. You can see the different locations. You can see the contours and what they're doing on this on this site.
And as the next 20 years progress, according to plan here, and it's filled in, it's going to fill in all of the lower contours, or just the place where the screener is operating?
Mr. Peterson would have to respond to that. He hasn't shown us a plan of how the grade would change.
One would expect the dust concerns to grow worse over time, though, as it fills in.
Another thing is it 2 trucks of lime dust coming out a day, or is it, what's the product? I'm just not sure of that. Is that
I'm not
wording of
sure
that?
either. I'll go into that.
Is there 10 trucks coming in and only 2 loads coming out a
Yeah.
day? That's another thing.
I'll follow
But
up on that,
where,
Mr. Crowley.
B is right there, that's, well, A is pretty much the top of the hill, and then B is just over the hill there, so it's not really in the low spot of the pit itself, because this is the actual low spot here. So it's pretty much right towards the top of the hill, so all that dust will basically catch the air and drift over towards houses. So,
Has there been a screening operation there before?
no, there has not.
Okay, so we
They've
have
just
no, we
taken
have
sand
no
out
actual
for the
experience
interstate.
with how it works.
And they've brought some material back in to kind of fill in, but that's pretty much it.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Anybody else want to speak?
My name is Rob Whitman. I live at 3068 County Road N. I am approximately 700 yards due east of the site. Unlike my neighbors, my property is quite full of foliage. I have a lot of managed forest. All of my woods are approximately 35 to 45 years of age. So I have a natural barrier. However, when you look at the natural topography of the proposed site, everything to the north and west is of the high point, and it will be catching all of the westward and northwestward prevailing winds, kind of drawing down towards all of my neighbors. The other concerns I have is wind mitigation. I'm of the nature of a tree is best planted 15 years ago. So if the proposed site is going to be completed in 20 years, that's when the trees are fully developed. So at this point, my concern is, even if you do plant trees, the wind is going to be too much to be carrying this dust down to the south and east. Some other concerns I still have are noise. I think it was a couple years ago we had a state-run project that did screen some sand and I think some stone out of there. I shouldn't say screen, but did dig a little bit. And the noise was concerning, even for me, kind of being in the hermit crab down low property that I have. It was still quite noisy throughout the day. So I'm also concerned about hours of operation exceeding into the weekend and even in the afternoons. Again, a lot of children in the area. I'm going to have 5 in the next month, so that'll be one thing to think about as well with this whole property. I guess I would be more concerned about what is going to be happening as far as mitigation for the wind. That is my biggest concern with this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak in opposition here?
My name is Dawn Dix, and I'm representing myself and my husband Kevin. And we are the house that in the property 28 acres just east of this. And we sold our property in Somerset 3 years ago to build here because of the location. And we were promised, we did talk to the township, that pit was closed. We're right next to that pit. So we don't have any children, but as we go to sell our home, that's going to be a hard sell for us with a pit right next door, if it's an active pit. And when we built our house, we had to get a lot of different ordinances, or we had to get a lot of different permits, and one of them is there's a stream that runs right next to our house, and on the map, I just want to make sure that we can see. There's a couple that bought the 10 acres that was adjoining with him, and they just bought the 10 acres. they just put in a septic system, and that is running along 128 and N, that corner. Young couple just bought that with 2 small children, and they, like I said, they're going to be doing some building, and they just put in a whole new septic system right next to that. And so I'm just concerned for the noise, trucks coming in and out, and also our house is right next to where there's no trees, it's flat. So that was our concerns.
Mr. Wozniak, could you point those 2 sites that have just been mentioned out on the map, please? Point out on the map those 2 neighboring neighbors. The Dix property to the east and the other one at the corner.
Yeah,
Built a brand new house.
when this photo was taken, the house wasn't in yet, and somewhere in here?
Yes, it's right where the blue line is, the property line. It's
Yeah.
just
And where is the stream you're talking about?
where you can see it's running where our shed is.
Yeah, let me see if I have another photo that I included that might illustrate that a little better. No, I don't have anything zoomed in, but it basically runs north-south, east of the Mr. Peterson's property line.
Is that an intermittent stream that only flows for part of the year? Is that why it's not
Well, we were not allowed
shown?
to build close enough to that because since we've been there in 3 years, it's come up over the banks, and so we had to get special permits, and we also had to move our home away from that.
I suppose it's really wet today, huh? After the rains we've had. And Mike, could you show us, where's this other property that people have just
Yes,
put the
pardon.
septic on?
Just a moment, let me zoom back down to where we're, pull up that site map again, and
You got a Google map up there?
it's one I had alluded to. It's right at the corner of, I think this is the one you're talking about? Right at the corner of 128 and County N?
Yeah, so this land was 40 acres.
Yeah.
And the gentleman that sold it lotted it off and sold this to Mr. Peterson, and then Annie Wright just purchased.
Yeah,
10
right.
acres.
Right would be over,
Right over here.
right over there, yeah.
The other side of the blue line.
Right cursor is. Right at the intersection. So from the intersection of 128 and N, that right property would extend about 500 feet to where it meets, where the east boundary of Mr. Peterson's property would be. Basically
The
this
west
line.
boundary, don't you mean? It's at the northwest quadrant of that intersection?
Correct, northeast.
Okay.
And they're purchasing horses. They're going to be going, there were horses there, and so they are going to go be, they have 2 small children, and then they are going to have horses on that property right next to it, so. She said that she had spoke to you?
She did, and asked a few questions, and some of the concern was, is it going to involve mining or crushing, blasting, and it would involve those things. It's processing of lime rock brought in from elsewhere.
It would not involve
Would
those
not,
things. It's
correct.
to be screening only. That's the only application we
And
have.
the water table, we were all kind of concerned with if there was going to be washing.
Stay close to the microphone if you want to be a part of the record here.
We were concerned, we were just concerned for the water table, and they just put that septic in, and So he said that he would not be doing any washing. So we just want to make sure that as you consider all of this today, you know, that you, if he says that, you know, that can't happen. And we'd just like, it doesn't sound like there's things that are brought to you yet. There's still things that maybe need to be explained and brought to your attention. And so that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Dix. Anybody else? Anybody want to speak on this? Oh, more opposition, is it?
Yes.
Okay. And your name, please.
Okay. My name is Claire Jensen. I'm representing myself and my husband, Randy Jensen. We live at 397 State Highway 128. According to this map, if you look at the ag lime circle and you move to the left, we're about 600 feet, or 600 yards, well, probably closer to 600 feet, about 2 lengths of this room to the property in question. Actually, that's to the deepest hole on that property. That's where our home resides. We don't own the property that resides, that adjoins it. There's probably there's a 5-acre parcel that's horseshoes around our property, but it is that close to our home. I would urge you today to table this. I don't believe you've heard enough information about how this is affecting the neighbors. I don't believe he's given you the plans for addressing the air, the water. 1 to 2 trucks per day is that he's bringing, that's him leaving, but he also said that he would be selling product and those trucks would be coming to get it on that location. How many trucks is that? How big of trucks are those? There's so many things. The noise levels, we were living there when the state was hauling in and out of there. It is quite loud. Saturdays, 6 to 6. So you're going Monday through Saturday, 6 to 6. I'd kind of like to have my granddaughter's 5-year-old birthday party. If I'm this distance away from trucks coming in and out, how do you think that's going to be? It's just, what I want to say, and I can't say it as eloquently as everyone else, but I don't believe you have enough information to vote on this today. There were numerous plans that were thrown up on here that weren't presented. You don't have plans from him. You don't have plans from him. You don't have plans from him. How can you make a decision without those? As far as, I mean, I would not want to be in your position for anything to make these decisions, and I understand how hard it is for you. And what concerns me is who monitors the things, you know, once you do come up with those, who monitors it? Because after the meeting, and thank you for the big explanations, it comes down to the homeowners. The homeowners have to call in and make the complaints, and if they make enough complaints, then something may be done. In the meantime, you live with that. Even the one prior to this, 1 year later, you know, I'm concerned about the dust. I had COVID. My lungs are compromised. 1 year later isn't going to help me if it's not being addressed and taken care of. I would prefer a real solid plan on how are you going to address this problem for the neighbors that live around. And lastly, like I said, I'm very disappointed in town of Katy for for voting on something and not talking to anybody that lives there. That's kind of ridiculous. But I would strongly encourage you to get more information, to have these plans in place. We listened to the one prior here, the request prior, and they were down to details of exactly what they were going to do. We don't have those details here today to say, well, sure. And I'm thinking the families don't have time to be taken off from work and sit here and wait for all those details either. Anyway, I appreciate the time to view my opinion.
Thank you, Ms. Jensen. Anybody else want to speak to this application? Mr. Peterson, if you're in a position to clarify and make commitments at this time, that might work. Otherwise, and I, of course, at this point don't know how my other board members feel, how my peers feel about this, but I'm inclined to send this back for specific and detailed plans that would address these kinds of issues, which means it'll cost you at least another month before we can come up with a decision. But maybe the rest of the board members are ready to go with it and craft conditions here on the fly. Is there anything else you want to say to us? Please use our mic. We never know when our cases will be appealed. It happens in 15% of them or something like that.
So again, I am kind of surprised that there's, and I'm concerned. I didn't mean to get everybody up in a roar, but the reason why it's not all laid out is because this is a terribly small operation that I'm looking at doing. Again, 2 trucks average throughout the year. We're looking at less than 20,000 ton coming into the site. As far as in leaving the site, I can't speak to exactly how much is going to leave because I don't know the quality of the material that I'm going to get. I would hope that more than half of that would leave. If it's less than half, I guess the hole gets filled in faster. But let's say it's half. At least I can pay for the material coming in with that. So there's some exact numbers. As far as, and to answer your question, I, of course, am able to today to comply with any requests that you would have as far as in trees. On that west property, you spoke of 80% opacity. So I would be willing 2-3 rows all the way along that west property line. That's what I was planning on doing anyway. As far as in the owners that spoke to the south and east, if you can see, I do not want to disturb the farm field because I'm a farm guy, but I would be willing to do 2 or 3 rows all the way along here, and there's already trees here. I mean, this is all old growth here, but I would be willing to do 2 to 3 trees along the entire farm field. And yeah, pine trees, of course. Was there any other concerns? As far as in dust and equipment-wise, this hasn't been, I guess I didn't address this either. So we went over it quite a bit. No washing. I have no future intent to wash. I think that was a concern. I have no future intent necessarily, I guess I'm not going to say necessarily, but at this time, I have no intent to crush. That material that I can't sell by screening, my intent again is to fill in that hole. Because I want this property to be worth more, and just to try and help everybody understand as far as in the neighbors, my intent is to bring your value up in the next 10 years. If that hole's filled in and a nicer house comes up, your property is going to be worth more than having that hole, because that hole, you can see it. I mean, it's open ground. It's not reclaimed. There's an open water hole in there. It's a big hole. There's probably 50 to 100,000 ton of material it would take to fill that hole. It's a big hole. But I guess I mean, I've dealt with issues before where, you know, if I was here today saying I'm gonna come in there and I'm gonna mine this property, I'm gonna extend the boundaries of that pit, I mean, that's a whole different story. I guess the reason why I don't have laid out plans is because it's such a small thing that I'm looking at doing, and I'm looking at filling it in. I'm not taking material out. But yes, I'm willing to commit to the trees. I'm bringing in a screener that has its own conveyors on it. So it's one unit, and it's from here to Steve there, Steve Smart. It's about that long. It's got the feed hopper on it. It's got the screener on it, the screener box on it. The wings fold out, which those are the conveyors. And you put the material in, it comes off those conveyors. The conveyors are not that tall. They're taller than the ceiling, but they're maybe 12 feet high at max. So when those piles get built up, that material is not dropping from, say, 30 feet. It's not like that. It's a small little unit, and I have one loader. So it'd be the loader, the screener, and then that portable scale. I'm not having my own trucks. I'm contracting the trucking out, so those trucks will not be sitting there on that site. So that will help with the dust mitigation, having not a whole string of conveyors there. It's just one unit, and the dustier material or the finer material is going to go down in the hole from that screener. So that will go downhill into that hole. As far as in the wind, I definitely, I mean, I'm hearing you guys, I hear it. When it's a windier day and we can put a limit, if you want, on the miles per hour of wind, I will shut down, I won't run. There's no benefit to anybody for me putting dust everywhere.
You want to sell the dust,
Yeah.
not have it blow around.
That's correct.
Name a wind speed that you think makes sense so as to not spread dust over the neighborhood.
There is a code to the amount of wind speed, but I can't think of it off the top of my head, but
Okay, can we work it out by next month if we put off a little bit here?
I really would like to get
Okay.
to an ending here today, so I'm willing to work with, if you guys throw something out.
Yes, Mr. Peterson.
Prevailing winds, I think, probably tend to be from the southwest in the summer. Would you be open to maybe if there was a condition that, it looks like to me on the northeast, doesn't appear to be a lot of close homes there, if maybe screening would be done with the southwest wind? Just a thought.
Or a lack of wind?
Suppose it was a 15 mile per hour wind limit.
I would be okay with that.
That's where a flag begins to ripple, if I remember right. You got any expertise, Mr. Wozniak or Mr. Cheezit, with respect to mitigation of the wind? I take your point about this particular screener that you intend to use. Could you, for the record, give us the make and model kind of description of it so we can lock that down?
It's a Finley.
Okay.
Let me get the exact model.
I suppose if we decide to go this way, we could leave a blank and fill it in later, but I mean, it does have a certain appeal to me, and I don't speak for anybody but myself at this point, that it's really, the piles would be no higher than essentially what is needed for truck height. Did you come up with something? It's a Finley.
It's a Finley. It's a 5 by 12 screen. So the screen itself is 5 foot by 12 foot, and it's a 683 Super Track.
683 Super Track, that's the model description of it?
Yep.
And that describes one that has a built-in conveyors with a hopper and is a maximum of about 12 feet tall, plus or minus one. Huh?
Yeah.
How many decks are in that screen?
There are 2 decks in that screen.
Okay.
There's been some testimony to the effect that the driveway can be a source of dust leaving the property. So can you live with a restriction that there would also not be customers trucking product out or your operation trucking material in to be processed under the 15-mile per hour wind limit? So essentially, you'd have no operation at all if the wind is over 15 miles an hour.
Could I propose that I water the road instead on dusty days?
You could. You could.
There's different treatments. You can water it, which there is water on site there, or you can put a treatment down, which townships do on dirt roads. It would be the exact same treatment. I would propose that you say use either or, because they're both approved by the county and state, water or that, I think is it chloride treatment for dirt roads, for gravel dirt roads.
Is that good? Is that good for water if it percolates into the ground?
It's used on township and county roads and has been for.
Mr. Chair, before coming to St. Croix County, worked for Minnesota County that had almost all the town roads were gravel roads, and karst area with a lot of limestone as well. The chloride tends to bind the soil, and it doesn't release very easily with runoff over it.
So it's not a threat to surface water off-site or to ground
I mean,
water?
it's used, typically used pretty judiciously where it isn't, it might be applied at the beginning of the season.
All right.
And wetting down was another common practice for, especially in proximity to mining sites where there was more heavier truck traffic over it. But both of those options would suppress dust on a driveway, if that's an issue.
While you've got your mic going, what do you think about the effectiveness of a 3-row tree barrier on the south along the field edge?
Well, as one of the commenters indicated, even if you were to plant trees at a 5 to 6 foot height, it would take a while for them to be effective to as a barrier for dust. They tend to provide some visual separation and the eye something else to look at, but if you're talking about noise or dust, it's going to be a while before they're effective for that.
Mm-hmm.
Number of years.
Do you have concerns about the ability of your department to enforce a 15-mile-an-hour operation limit, a wind speed thing? Do you have any idea how you would go about enforcing that? Would you have to send staff out there, or send a sheriff's deputy with a wind speed measurement tool, or go by the new Richmond airport, or how would you?
We're either dependent upon what the meteorologists say. For example, I believe we might be hitting that 15 today. Not as windy as yesterday, but yeah, we'd have to decide, well, what's that based on? What measure? Is it a local measure? You could have a wind speed gauge do a out there, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah. There's a gentleman who'd like to speak again, Mr. Knockin, I think.
I just want to say on the wind speed thing, he's not going to be able to run probably 3/4 of the year out of that if you're going to put that. That's not even really a fair goal. And I'm not necessarily against everything, but like, that's not even fair for him. So I don't know how you would enforce it, much less if he'd be actually able to run, because you have a wide open farm field behind him. I live up on the hilltop that's right across from him. We rarely run our AC because we have a 15 to 20 mile an hour wind constantly. So I don't know if that's gonna help. I mean, then you might as well not even approve the permit for him. I don't know how he'll be able to run.
This time of year in particular.
Yes, all year round. So I'm just saying it's not fair for him to try and put that restriction on. There's just no way he's gonna be able to operate, or there's no way you're gonna be able to enforce it.
Okay,
So-
what's your alternative number?
I don't have a good solution for the dust mitigation to the south. It's just,
You think there is no way to
I don't know how you
solve
would
that?
do it. Like I said, you can plant all the trees.
You want us to tell him he can have no operation at all?
I don't know. That's where you want to put it. I don't know how to fix the problem.
I think you're gonna have to increase our pay.
So I apologize for making it difficult. Like I said, you can plant all the trees you want. I don't, you're got dust that's gonna come up and off a hilltop. He's sitting on a high point right across from I'm on the other high point. So I don't know how effective that's gonna be. And maybe dust isn't gonna be that huge of an issue. I think it'd still be some, again, depending on if he truly isn't running as hard as he wants or as hard as he says he's going to. If he's truly not pushing it, dust might not be a mitigating factor, but it's still a concern having kids. I don't want that coming off of there. And then I don't know, again, with wind speed, I don't know how effective that would be. And it's just, that's hard.
What are your thoughts on the southwest wind restriction?
What'd you say?
What are your thoughts on a restriction for only southwest winds?
Well, southwest, I mean, you're blowing that way, but again, you still have the dairy that's behind there.
No, to be clear, it would be wind from the southwest blowing
Yes,
to the northeast?
blowing to the northeast, yes. So you have farm fields and woods. There is still a heifer lot for the dairy that's behind there. They're only out there in the summer. I don't know how that would affect cattle. I can't imagine it would be greatly. So that would be your best. But again, we have a southwest wind maybe a quarter of the year. So you generally are going to have a west wind, northwest, or north. We even have a lot of northeast. So I don't want to be completely unfair to him trying to put on a restriction that's just not plausible.
Mr. Peterson?
So the comment that I want to make is I have ran this screener with the exact product that I'm bringing up, and it didn't dawn on me until he talked about the wind speed again, but I've ran this with people watching, and it's not kicking off a lot of dust. It really isn't. The material I'm bringing in has a natural moisture level to it, and some of it has it has some fines in it, but the dust was not rolling off this thing. It's not the picture that is getting painted here. I mean, I've ran a couple 100,000
Was there
ton through
pictures of it in
100
operation?
ton through it, 100. And I just didn't see the dust that we're addressing here. It just didn't come off that way.
Is the equipment available for inspection somewhere? Is there a unit like this in operation anywhere nearby?
My unit, my piece of equipment is in Barron County.
You could move it down here for a demonstration, I suppose, huh?
It's a couple $1,000s to move a piece like that, so if I move it, I would like to run.
Indeed. Be a gamble on your part, wouldn't it?
This whole thing's been a gamble.
If we look at it and it billows of dust come off it and we say no, then you gotta spend the money to move it back. What is you're planning to more or less permanently locate it here once you got it here, huh?
It's a portable unit. It's on tracks.
Yes.
So it's not like I'm putting a structure down with cement and all that.
I understand that part of it. Are you planning to move it back and forth during the year between your two sites, the one in Barron County and the one here?
No, it's just at our farm right now. I did testing there. So there's no other site.
What's the elevation of where you're planning to put it in relation to the highest and lowest point of the pit? You know, looking at the contour lines, it looks like it's kind of sitting midpoint.
Looks like the high point is around 1220. And I can't quite see, but looks like 30 feet below that is where B is.
So what would be the impact of moving the screener to the lowest point in the pit?
Be sitting in, you'd have its feet wet some of the time, huh?
Well, I guess the reason why I have it there is because when I feed it from A, which is the raw material, B is close to A, so it's a efficiency thing, and B, the screener, the fines drop right down into the hole. There's no movement. If I am down in the hole, I have to bring A all the way down to the hole, and then I have to take the fines and stockpile them with my loader. It becomes very inefficient. And also the storage is up top too, so you have to bring the good product, some of the good product up too. It's a lot of driving and fuel, and they don't want that either.
I think I'd like to have somebody from the staff look at this machine in operation and take films of it. And also consider all of the options that we have talked about here and make a staff recommendation before we decide. That's where
Is
I'm
it
coming
possible
from.
for one of
Gonna
our staff to
sound
come up
out
to
the-
your, oh, sorry, Mr. Chair, I didn't mean to
Go ahead.
interrupt. And that, is there some product at your current location in Barron and that where we could take and come up and test the machine and do a video? So we would be able to do that with staff, if that's what the Board of Adjustment wants. We'd be able to take and go up there to his location so he doesn't incur the extra expense. And then we would take and do a video that we could show the Board of Adjustment at the June meeting.
We're gonna do that. I think the applicant's gonna have to pay your mileage, not your salaries, but your mileage. So, remember, we represent some taxpayers. What about the rest of you board members? Where are you coming from? Dave, do you
I
think
agree
you
with
can
your,
solve it with a wind direction method, or?
Well, it might help, but if
Well, there's all kinds of maps out there for wind direction and speeds. Our business has been looking it up here. I see a picture of the machine here. Yeah, it's what he says it is.
I think that could all be looked at in the next, if we postpone it for a month or whatever, then, have them look into these issues again with the wind and what the.
Yeah, there's plenty of meteorological data on
Right,
wind
yeah.
directions and stuff. So.
Yeah, and look at it next month.
We don't postpone unless we have specific things to be done that we're postponing for. It's not a mechanism for just making life hard for our applicants or avoiding hard decisions on our part. If we're going to postpone, it's because we want film and testimony about the operation of this machine in as realistic a conditions as can be obtained for a test. And it's because we want data back about wind speed and direction as it pertains to the homes that are around this pit or this site. Am I right? We are definitely not in the business of NIMBY, not in my backyard. We are not in the business of making decisions because neighbors don't like something new coming into their area. It wouldn't matter if you brought in a petition with 10,000 signatures on it. We are not in the business of holding elections or plebiscites to make our decisions. But we are in the business of trying to apply the county's ordinances and the state laws to specific applications, and the public health and welfare is central to our duty. Given all that, I think it's appropriate to ask if the board wants to table this for a month for those two specific things to be investigated by our staff. And if we do that, we won't close the hearing, so that when we come back in a month at our next regular meeting, we will have information from the staff, and we might potentially have new information from the neighbors who have done their own studies. I'm not slamming the door to that. I don't think it would be appropriate for me to do so. Also, I think a couple of members here have found that they can find the Finley model number 683 on the web. It's a great world we live in, but that also means that we need that information about the Finley 683 in our record in case this is appealed, or this case is used as evidence in another case, or who knows what the future may hold. So staff, dig up some stuff on the Finley 683 so that we have documentation of how it works and how, in addition to your visit and your photographs, your film, your recordings. That's, I think, where we're going. Mr. Pillar?
Yeah, also, I want to include in that a good clarification of truck traffic.
Okay. If it's 1 to 2 trucks, 365 days in a year, that at its maximum, that looks like 730 trucks in and out. So that's the total number in a year. If it all happened in 10 days, it'd be 73 trucks each day. So we'll tighten up on, see if that's really what's meant. Does that include all the traffic? Yeah, that's what you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
getting in and out.
All right. Anything else that anybody wants to have included in the motion to table this for a month?
The limestone, if there's talk about toxics, you know what I'm trying to say.
Toxicity.
Yes,
Poisonous?
thank you, yeah. I guess I'd like to see some data on that of some sort.
From an air inhalation standpoint or water quality standpoint?
Air primarily.
Oh, from breathing
Yeah,
of
yeah.
limestone dust.
Yeah.
Is it toxic, and if so, how much?
Right.
Okay, we've had testimony from individuals who are worried about that, and I guess that justifies such an inquiry. Did you want to say one more thing, Mr. Peters? Yes. Use our mic, please. As I say, we never know when we're going to be appealed.
That whole area is limestone. You've got quarries all around that area. MSHA regulates the quarries. So MSHA does an inspection at least once, sometimes twice a year. County Materials down the road, they get twice a year. They have monitors that they put on the operators to monitor how much dust they're exposed to. And County Materials also did another study that was done on their own to see how much silica was in the limestone, because when you talk about limestone getting into your lungs, it's not the limestone that is going to be a carcinogen, it's the silica that may be in the limestone. So similar to what like a frac sand would be, they're concerned about the silica levels. The silica levels that were done at County Materials, which they go through, it's over 500,000 ton a year. MSHA has consistently and has always found them to be under the levels of what MSHA considers to be a carcinogen.
Thanks, but why don't we just ask you, if you have that information readily available, just hand it off to the staff and it'll save them having to hunt for it. If you don't, they'll hunt it up and they'll also tell us what MSHA stands for.
I guess I'd just like to make a comment that these quarries don't have to go through this. And I'm surprised that I'm being asked for all this stuff. But.
All right, well, we're also not in the business of making everybody unhappy, nor making everybody happy, either way. We're not asking for berms in this instance, so it's a little bit different from our typical mine. But you got a note on that, Mr. Chaseth, about our following up in the dust concern that we've had this testimony about? All right.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So I got, looks like 5 things that the Board of Adjustment is looking for, and that in order to continue this hearing next month, the board is looking for a video of the machine operating so that we can see how much dust is coming off from it. The board is looking for some diagrams or information about the wind speed and direction of the wind in this area. They're looking for information or specs on the Finley Model 683 screener that the applicant is intending to use. And they're looking at getting a better number on the total number of truckloads in and out of the site. And then the breathing or air impact information, if we can get that, and if there's any danger with the silica or the lime dust for the area.
All right, members, do you want a table for a month based on search for those facts?
I'll make a motion, we table this for a month.
Second.
Miller, Peterson, further discussion? You gotta remember to all be good enough to come back next month. 3 is the minimum for a quorum based on, carrying over the testimony from one month to the next. All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
All right. We're done with this one. We'll start with the next. You'll have your chance.
This is a sidebar.
Send it in as a memorandum or an email or a letter, or come next month.
Okay, this is not actually related directly to this topic, though.
Oh,
More or
really?
less, I would like proper notification. A lot of our citizens of our township did not get proper notification of this. I don't know if you at the board have any proper authority with that? Okay.
Sorry, we don't.
That's okay. Thank
Run
you.
for the town board. Mr. Peterson would tell you about his complaints about his town and stuff that the board seems to do without notice to the neighbors. It's, in these days when we don't have newspapers the way we used to, it seems like there's more of that.
You need to talk to your town board.
Yep. All right, we have one more matter to deal with, and I still have hopes that we'll be done before noon, but we'll give every case the proper consideration. So who's making the presentation on the,
I will do this one.
this is Somerset Campground or something, Somerset, campground in Somerset? Thank you. This one's going to be uncontroversial, right?
I hope so.
we go. Okay. Your final item for consideration at this meeting, Board of Adjustment members, and is a conditional use permit request for a campground. This would be for the Somerset Camp site, and I'll note that, let's just cursor down here. This property is in the town of Somerset in an R2 residential zone. I should clarify that part of the site is actually in the village of Somerset, but the portion that is proposed for development of the campground is in the town of Somerset. Access off of Parent Street within the village of Somerset. And the site size, 24 acres, and this would be subject to the provisions of the county's Chapter 15, Section 15.322, our campground standards in the zoning ordinance. And as is customary, we've included a staff report and a copy of an application of the application for this proposal. I would just a little background on this. You would notice this has an older application number dating to 2021, and we've been kind of sitting on this application. The applicant originally came in with a more substantial proposal in terms of the number of proposed sites, but they didn't have the level of detail the county was expecting, and some time has transpired while they sort of retooled their plans and had a surveyor prepared site plan provided, and we anticipated that they would sort the issues out, and a few things have changed regarding future plans from the village of Somerset regarding extension of utilities through the area that would impact the potential to provide services to this Somerset Camp property. I'll get into that in my continued overview here. I'll note that Steve Kaufman, property owner for the application, and has applied to operate a campground, again, according to our campground provisions in the county zoning, and which basically requires a conditional use permit for public or private campgrounds that accommodate 2 or more camping sites. The site that was historically used as a campground, it's not operated for a number of years, many years, but was previously known as Somerset Camp. It includes extensive frontage on the Apple River, quite a beautiful property, quite honestly, with the vegetative cover, a lot of mature pine trees and other vegetation along the Apple River as well, and quite a bit of topographic grade change. So essentially the property sits below some of the commercial and residential use, some of which is in the village of Somerset and some of it in the town that abut the site. And it actually is across the river from some property that is in agricultural open space use and is not developed at this time. The applicants indicated that has represented the request as creating little to no impact as the campground, again, was a historical use for the area, and a lot of the basic layout infrastructure from the prior campground, including the main access road into the property and some of the other grassed access roads for the campsites still exist. Actually, some of the infrastructure which will be replaced. Electrical infrastructure for sites that would be served with electrical service still exists as well. As I had indicated, the access to the site is from Parent Street. It abuts a commercial area in the village of Somerset, and there's an adjacent shopping center basically across the road from where the access comes into the site. I also had noted that the site is heavily wooded. It includes a mature red pine forest that the owner tends to preserve and manage. The existing roads, campsites, and infrastructure, as I said, also remain largely intact. There's a major elevation change between Parent Street and the adjacent properties to the site, and a portion of the site, used for the campsites, it drops from about 900 feet down to about 830 to 850 elevation. And so you have a nice grade separation that would separate the activity of the camping from abutting uses, and in doing so also creates a very private feel to the campground. As I had alluded to, it's quite a beautiful site. It serves as, again, that function to provide a buffer. Each campsite is proposed to be 40 by 50 feet. The campsites will have some improvement, including a 10 by 20 hard surface for a picnic table and a gravel pad for campers to park on. What's being proposed at this time are 21 sites, although the applicant has indicated they're anticipating doing future phases, which would bring the total up to 70 to 100 sites eventually. The primary roadway into the site is blacktop, and the additional access roads, which would be kind of one-way traffic, are turf roads. They're very established and, to be honest, very compact and appear to be very passable in terms of use in inclement weather. Nearly 80% of the site will remain as open space, and I'd note there are 2 existing and renovated pavilion areas on site, and all campsites and facilities will be outside the 75-foot ordinary high water mark setback from the Apple River and outside of floodplain. The applicant has proposed, they've indicated they can construct a sanitary system, but would prefer to use holding tanks based on the fact that the long-term plan is to connect sewer and water to the village of Somerset. Actually, they would connect to village water service with a proposed bathroom shower building and for water, for access for water for the campers. Development of additional campsites beyond the initially proposed 21 sites would require another conditional use permit review and approval by the Board of Adjustment. We don't really have sort of a concept review process for conditional use permits. So lacking the detail of which sites specifically, staff would suggest that it would probably not be appropriate for the board to approve future phases without full detail, but ultimately that's up to the Board of Adjustment. Just to look at some visuals, you can see from this map that was in the packet, outlined in the light blue, the campground location. The north part of the site in the village of Somerset, where the access would come off of Parent Street, is outlined in yellow on this drawing. And they are proposing an existing office and some other facilities in there as well. They have some other issues in mind for that area, which would be subject to approval by the village of Somerset, because it is located within the village of Somerset. The property is largely surrounded by property in the village of Somerset. The zoning for the property is R2. There is some R2 zone property within the town that lies to the north, sort of northeast, as you can see on this sketch. And to orient you to this site, if you're familiar with the village of Somerset, there would be a McDonald's and a Quick Trip in this vicinity at that intersection, just north of the northerlymost point of the Somerset Camp property. To fit on the slide, I have this drawing turned sideways. It could be pulled up in their application if you wanted to look at it with north pointing to the upper part of the drawing. But what you can see on this is where within the site the 21 campsites are being proposed. And the applicant actually has followed up with another drawing that was provided after this presentation was put together that does show a proposed bathroom shower building that would be in the vicinity, I believe, of this pavilion as shown on this drawing. Key thing I'd mention about the location of these sites, this follows a pattern of what the prior campground, the way it was laid out. And so there's not a lot of site work or modification that's going to be required to put these in. I think the biggest challenge is the applicant wants to retain as much of the mature tree cover as possible, so they're going to thoughtfully fit their sites in so that amenity can be retained and be very desirable for the campers that will use the site. And it's well away from the Apple River, both grade separated and well outside of the shoreline setback area. So no issues as far as that's concerned. Typical layout, this was just a detail provided of how the individual campsites would be developed. Again, there's going to be a little thought put into just exactly how they're orientated off the turf road access roads to minimize the impact on the existing vegetation, which is, again, very desirable and creates quite an amenity for those who will be using the site. This is what I'm talking about with these photos. You can get a sense. It's quite beautiful, actually. And you can see there's some of the old infrastructure which they will be replacing should this be approved and they're allowed to move forward. And this is an example of one of those turf roads that, to be honest, was in use at least through the 90s, I believe, maybe. And still is very much intact. Just a couple more views. An area where some soil testing was done in case they do need to install a on-site sanitary system, and again, just a look at what those accesses would be like. There's an electric grid shed that's present on the property. The town considered this item, town board, on May 1st and recommended approval of the request to allow operation of 21 campsites. And your options here are to approve the request, deny the request, or table, postpone the decision to consider information gathered and or request any additional information you feel may be needed. The one thing I would say here is there's a lot of dynamics happening with the village of Somerset. Immediately east of the Somerset camp property, there's property owned by the village of Somerset. The intention is to extend sanitary sewer and actually construct a lift station on that property. And the applicant has indicated that the village is willing to allow this site to access sanitary service and water service from the village once that sanitary is available. And whether, they've indicated whether it's annexed into the village or not. If you have any questions about that, Mr. Kaufman or Mr. Gates could provide further clarification. But for that reason, in terms of meeting sanitary needs for the proposed campsites and the bathroom shower building that they're proposing, I think staff are more comfortable with the temporary use of a holding tank. It would, of course, have to meet permitting requirements, sanitary code permitting requirements, but because there is sound reason to believe that there will be village services available in the not too distant future based on the information that's been provided to the county. And there are also development plans on that property in the village that it appears that the intent is to develop some multifamily housing and commercial uses at the interchange on the highway, again, immediately due east of the Somerset Camp property. We've included in the staff report, and that is mimicked in the draft decision document that I provided you copies of, I should say, and I did provide copies of that to the applicant, Mr. Kaufman and Mr. Gates, to look over as well. I'll just run a quick run through these findings, and then I can jump over after you open the hearing and take any comments. We can pull up that decision document if you want to talk specifically or have an overview of the conditions that staff is proposing or the conclusions of law part of that document. Again, applicant is Steve Kaufman. The noted as the agent on the application is Scott Gates. Both gentlemen are present here today. We're referencing section 13.22, the county's campground provisions, as the standards that this conditional use permit is subject to. And I'd note the request is for 21 campsites and plus a proposed on-site bathroom shower facility. The intent is to utilize the pre-existing layout that's been documented in the site plan prepared by Auth Consulting and providing a sufficient level of detail for Board of Adjustment to consider action on this item. Basically, the proposal has to provide for parking for 2 vehicles, and these are being proposed as RV camper sites. And I think the intent, the desire of the applicant is to have sanitary connections to each services, to each site that, again, could initially be extended to a holding tank and then ultimately connected to village sanitary service once that is available, as well as the same for the proposed bathroom shower facility. And again, the access from Parent Street, there's a continuous drive that's a paved drive that extends through the site, and then there are turf access roads that serve the pre-existing campground that they intend to utilize again. I'll close my remarks, and I will just pull up the decision document, and then I'll pause, and you can take any comments or hear from the applicant. They may have further clarifications or can answer questions the board may have. Let's see.
Yeah, Mike, are they planning on a dumping station for the campers?
Well, the intent would be to use these holding tanks as temporary solutions, which would have to be pumped, and then ultimately connect that. Based on what we've heard, that those improvements could occur in 2025. The extension of sanitary from the village and construction of a lift station on that property to the east of the site. So, in the short term, it would be the holding tank solutions that would be subject to pumping for the 21 sites and the bathroom shower building.
Okay, well, the way I'm looking at this decision document, it sounds like the holding tanks are going to be exclusively for the shower facilities.
The way this has been represented is that's what the applicant would like to do. Initially, subject to their licensing requirements from public health, they could pump the tanks in the RVs, and they have a dump station at their other campground facility, River's Edge. But what they've indicated to us in their proposal is they would like to have a holding tank solution on a temporary basis for the campsites, where there would be sanitary services from each site to a holding tank, and then connect to the village sanitary once it's available.
Just to summarize, what we are asked to approve would have a hookup at each of the 21 campsites, and would not need to have, therefore, a dump site for the RVs. Correct?
Correct. I mean, they have to provide for their wastewater.
I know, but we've dealt with other campsites where folks use the ditches on the surrounding properties for emptying their RVs. So here they'd hook up. The bath facility would also be the storm shelter, presumably, built of concrete block or something strong?
I'd allow,
You don't
defer
know,
to the
all right?
applicant to speak to that. We had some discussion of that with a site visit, and, it certainly could in part serve that function. How structurally sound, I don't know if they have a structure design yet.
But they have not pointed out to you any other building that could serve as a storm shelter?
They haven't identified one in their proposal.
Okay, and how do the emergency services from the sheriff and the fire department get into this?
how do they access the site?
Exactly.
Yeah, again, that access drive comes off of Parent Street and extends all the way to the east. It is a paved drive that existed with the prior iteration of the Somerset campground. And that's what is proposed as the access.
Outstanding. Any other questions, board members? Nope. All right. Anybody else in the room want to speak in favor of this application? Mr. Kaufman or Mr. Gates, if you wish to speak, you're welcome to. You are not required to, but if you do speak, you are required to sign our piece of paper over there.
Thank you, Board. Appreciate your time here, especially this close to lunch and giving us this much time and consideration. But I think Mike covered most everything we have in mind here. It's, as he alluded to earlier, we started this in 2021, but it's been an ongoing process as we waited for the village, which owns the property next to us, to decide what their plans and what they were going to do with that. So we did have a larger plan we presented in 2021, but at that time, a new ordinance or a new law went into place that the CUPs required a certified survey map. So at that time, it was a little challenging even to get one to get in a timely manner. So here we are now, a couple of years later, but we reduced the scope of it just as things kind of to that east property have now developed, and as far as sanitary and other plans for them. So we've scaled it back just to these 21 sites. For now, the proposal is to expand, but as a business person, I know most businesses do the supply and demand, so we're going to start and see where the demand goes with that. We currently operate River's Edge, which you all probably aware of. We have 450 licensed sites there. We have about 50 seasonal sites on that property, and then 17 seasonal sites on our second campground called Riverdale, which is just off of County Road C and 93rd in the township of Star Prairie. So we like this, the concept of these seasonal sites. The people are often retirees, or we get a number of contractors who are in our county doing development or road work, or a lot of them doing the underground, services, that they come in and need a place to spend their summers at. Our proposal again is May 1 through October 31. Yeah, I think that's it. I think most of St. Croix County or the residents believe in campgrounds. St. Croix County's in the same business itself with a number of campgrounds that they own and operate. So, yeah, I'm here to answer any questions if anyone has them.
Any questions for Mr. Kaufman? Oh, good. Mr. Gates, anything you want to say?
Just really quick, we'll try and get everybody to lunch. I'll address just a couple of the questions really briefly. Sewer, we have a number of choices. In 2021, when we initially presented this, we went to DATCP and actually had it licensed in anticipation. They've, along with Mike's comments, they approved us at that time for this initial phase to either individually pump each site, or if we can get the holding tank scenario, they were fine with that without an on-site treatment. We do have a dump station at River's Edge. Our intent, assuming it's acceptable to the county and to you guys, is to plumb hookups to each site. We think it makes more sense than individual hookups. We have our own pumper truck, so we can control that, and these are seasonal campers, so they don't want to hook up and go to a dump station or a ditch anyway. But we think that makes sense. Put the pipes in now. Intent is to hook up to the city system, village system rather, or if we have to, we have suitable soils to do a septic system.
We think that makes sense. They are contractually required, I believe, August 25, 2025, to provide those services to the village-owned site and to the Plurd property on the other side of the interchange. Focuses on seasonal sites, not transient, people that come and make this their home for the summer. I get asked questions about, are you gonna have security, are you gonna have an on-site manager? And my comment is, we've got 21 of them. Every one of those is vested in their own backyard. And that's the experience we found, that you know, we don't have parties, we don't have, you know, wild goings on, because those guys are there keeping an eye on things. I think those are just the couple things that, I guess one more comment really quickly. So when you buy a piece of land like this, it's zoned R2. We could build a bunch of houses on bigger lots there. There's a question with it being an isolated parcel wrapped by the village, if that's the highest and best use of it. Sometime in a future, immediate or further down the line, there may be a better use identified. We're not big enough to just sit on the land. We have to generate some kind of income on it. This becomes a really good way to do that. It's fairly non-invasive. The infrastructure isn't super expensive. It's affordable to us. And what it does is it creates a placeholder where we can protect this high-value site, see what comes down the road in the future, so that it doesn't have a bunch of development that tends to restrict it. So I got any questions, feel free to ask I or Steve.
So I understand that if we approve this application, you will be installing the plumbing so that each RV will be hooked up to plumbing.
That's the plan.
That's right.
Do the
And
piping, holding tanks, we have one pump point, and makes it simpler, cleaner, easier. And then that same plumbing, those same hookups will then be extended to a private septic.
to the
for
ultimate
public.
situation. And you will be building the bathroom and shower facility immediately. And that can double as a storm shelter if we have a tornado?
That'd be correct. We currently have, in the adjacent property, I might talk to that, we also own the existing bathhouse shower building, was also the concession stand, and we have that available as well in the interim until that is, something gets built down below.
And I think that's a good point. That is a concrete, it's a pole building, but the bathrooms are concrete block, I'm pretty sure.
Yes.
Pretty good size. They have restrooms and showers. Steve's just been in the process of remodeling that. So that's available now to those people.
Does their rental contract entitle them to use that building?
Yes.
Okay. And you're interested in seasonal rentals, not weekends and that kind of stuff. What's the minimum that you will rent one of your sites?
Monthly.
Monthly. I have no other questions of them. Yep. Anybody else want to speak in favor of the application? Is anybody here to speak in opposition to the application? Yes, sir. If you've signed in, step up to our microphone, please, and identify yourself and say your piece.
I don't have a map here where I live.
What is your address and your name, please?
213 Bluff Drive, right off of Parent Street. Our backyard is adjacent to their yard that goes down the hill on the corner of the street.
And your name? And your name?
Steve Sampson.
Thank you, Mr. Sampson.
213.
Bluff.
What I'm concerned about is what we have in the summertime when they do the tubing. They haul their tubers down Parent Street, down to the end of their property to wait, or they pick them up and bring them back. Well, at the end of tubers, they're all drunk at the end of the street there. It's littered with beer cans, it's noisy, and every time we get down, people going down the river there, we hear it. So there's no tree blockage. We're gonna hear everything in the campsite. And if it's gonna be seasonal campsite, it's gonna be people coming down the river partying, and we're gonna hear that at night. We're gonna smell the campfires. Is there a way I could, of where we are?
Let me see if I can pull something up.
And if it was zoned, and now we're going back to not rezoning, people have already bought houses there. I mean, this is right in the middle of the town. You know, we want people to camp, okay, come camp, but leave. Don't stay there. We don't want to smell it, we don't want to hear it. They already have a spot where we already hear the amphitheater, we already hear the river's edge, or their other spot. So that's all we're gonna hear. Hear, smell. If you got people with their own, you know,
Their own RVs?
their own RVs coming in and up and down that one street, leaking sewage up and down it, that street already needs to be repaired. Somebody goes by with a big truck, the decks bounce going down that street. So if you're gonna add more traffic to that road, I mean, it's already dirty and gritty on the end of the road there. Nothing's been redone. The tubers go there, they stand there to get picked up from being on the tube on the river all day. They're drunk. You just saw the incidents of the Apple River. That's what that is, that section is for. And that's what we-
What did we just see? For the record, what did we just see on the Apple River?
Well, the news of the killing on the Apple River, it's not there for people to come, you know, there's a bunch, that's all it is a bunch of partying kids. They're coming in for the weekend, and they usually leave, or they go up to the other spot where their other campground is. But this is right in the middle of town. It's not safe. I've already called one person that was passed out on my drive, back in my deck that came up, walking from the Apple River, or where they get picked up on Parent Street. He was passed out in my backyard. So, I don't know how this can be safe for anybody.
Just bear with me just a moment, we'll get
We
this.
don't have to see it. I'm just basically, I'm on Parent Street. My backyard is right across Parent Street. And we hear everything on the river as it is. And this is supposed to be closer up. So those trees, no blockage, no nothing. We hear it as it is. That's all I got to say.
Anybody else who'd like to speak? And you don't necessarily have to say whether you're for or against. Anybody got anything they want to say? Yes, ma'am. If you signed our statement, then tell us who you are and where you live and what you think we ought to hear.
Oh, sorry.
Well, Mike plays
Go
with
ahead.
the maps.
I can't, I'm having a little trouble getting.
Unsuccessful. I think we visualize it. Yeah.
Yes, my name is Barb Lockway. I own a unit in the Bluffs of Somerset development, 26 units, and it's right off of Parent Street and Bluff Drive. My only issue was that before I knew exactly where this campsite was proposed, my only issue was that it was going to be right across the street along that fenced-in area, and the smell of burning wood in the campsites and noise from different campsites was going to affect our development. I can't, in the summer, sometimes I can't open the windows because of the smell of the wood-burning smoke. And I know that I don't know exactly how far River's Edge is from our area, or I think there's another campground that allow wood burning. But every once in a while we get, you know, the smells from the wood and whatever, and there's a few other residents too that can't open their windows because of the smoke. So that was my only issue. And then as I talked to Steve about where these sites are going to be, he said that there were trees that border that area where it's like a buffer. It really wouldn't affect our area, but I don't know where the prevailing wind is or anything. So that was my only concern, is the smell of wood burning, campfires, and noise. I don't know what's going to come from all that. So that's all I had to say, really. It's just a concern that I had. I'm not, for it or against it. I just want it to be noted.
Buck,
Yes, sir.
there's been no camping there now, right? So there couldn't be any wood smoke from any site right now. It must be coming from somewhere else.
We do have
There are some
we do have a bar in town that runs a wood burning barrel at night at their place, and that's further in town. We can smell that.
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with this campsite.
Huh?
This,
That's further past the campsite.
right, but again, this hasn't been active, so there's nothing coming from that.
Yeah, not now, no.
Right.
So I'm just saying, further past the campsite.
All right, anybody else in the room that would like to be heard? Board members, do you have questions you want to ask of anybody who has testified here? No? Okay. Well, it says 12:07 on the clock on the wall, so I'm closing the hearing. And we'll move ahead and make a decision based on the facts that we've got from the staff report and the testimony that we've heard. My concerns were answered, so I don't have any proposed changes to make to the staff write-up. How about the rest of you?
No, I'm good.
Well, would you like to adopt the staff proposal as our findings, conclusions, and decision?
I'll make a motion, we approve the application as presented.
Mr. Miller, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Peterson, you guys have hogged all the glory today. Did you want a piece of this, Mr. Telejohn? Do you want one of them to cede you the opportunity? Or are you going to say something profound now, right now in the discussion?
I'm good.
You are, huh? Any further discussion? All in favor should now vote aye.
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 And opposed, nay. And that's passed unanimously. Okay. That doesn't mean we get to go home yet. Because we've got to, yeah, we got to elect a chair and a vice chair, and we got to discuss future meeting day and time. Let me see, maybe during the election of the chair, Heather, you could preside. So there would be not only no impropriety, but no appearance of impropriety. Oh.
long as that's okay. So we will address business item number 1, election of the Board of Adjustment chairperson. So I will, at this time, open nominations for BOA chairperson.
I would nominate Buck Malik as chair.
Okay, we have one nomination for Buck Malik. Are there any other nominations? Any other nominations?
Come on, you
You
guys,
need
come
a,
on,
you
come
need
on.
a second on his?
I do not.
Okay.
Come on.
Sorry, my microphone wasn't on. I apologize. Any other nominations for chair? Anything, Mr. Malik, you would like to say based on the nomination of you as chair?
Say it isn't so.
Well-
Honestly, my feelings will not be hurt by somebody else being chair. Not a bit. Don't hold back just because think you're doing me a favor.
Based on Mr. Malik's comment, is there anybody else that would like to make a nomination for anyone else? Well, if there are no other nominations, I will close nominations at this time. Based on the fact that we only have one candidate, I will, instead of doing secret ballots, ask for a unanimous vote on the nomination of Mr. Malik as chairperson. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
You are elected as chairperson 4-1. Sorry that my microphone keeps going out, but you were elected as the chairperson 4-1.
Thanks for presiding. Thank you, the rest of you, to the extent that that represents a vote of confidence, but I don't believe it for a minute. We are now ready to elect a vice chair, a critical job, particularly in view of my age and obviously failing abilities. So the floor is open for nominations for vice chair.
I'll nominate Mr. Miller.
Mr. Miller, Joe, to his friends, has been nominated for the position of vice chair. Is there another nomination for vice chair? Anybody? You can even self-nominate, the window is closing. Any nomination for vice chair? None. Having heard no other, I will close the nominations and ask, do you want to cast a ballot for Mr. Miller as vice chair? All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. You are the vice chair. Joe, congratulations.
Thank you. You are not allowed to retire.
We don't have involuntary servitude in this country. And I'm sure that reflects, I'm sure I speak for everybody in saying how grateful we are that you have been willing to be vice chair. A couple of times this last year, you've actually had to preside, and it hasn't been easy.
It's been interesting, I'll say that.
Yeah. A discussion of meeting day and time. Okay, I didn't call for this on the agenda, so who has what did we want to talk about that?
Buck, I will just let you know. So once again, for June, I did check with the courts, and they will not need this room, so we can start early in June if you'd like to do that.
I like to sleep in there. 8:30, I think, is better. Don't you?
7:30?
I can live with you.
The building doesn't open till 8, does it?
Correct.
And generally, the staff wants a little time. Sometimes there's been an emergency overnight they've got to deal with. I think
Are
that's why-
microphones being on when whoever's speaking?
Yeah,
What,
we'll
you
watch
want
this
us to make a
recording.
record of what we're saying?
I don't know.
Oh.
Audio-visual person just
Test,
popped
1,
out.
2.
Just complained about not hearing any, just seeing mouths moving. So our meeting on June, what the heck?
27th.
June 27th will be at 8:30 a.m., that is.
And I guess the item on the agenda was more about going forward. Do you want to continue with 9:15 to accommodate the courts, and then we will just go month to month based on if the room is available to do earlier?
I don't like it, but I think it's the reasonable thing to do.
But we're getting close to, what did it say, September, October?
Do we have a date yet, or on when they'll occupy the new space? And
So the courts are already in the new conference room at the end of the hall and that, so they shouldn't need this space going forward, and in a few months, we'll be over in the new building as well.
oh, so we have no conflict.
And that, so we should be able to plan for 8:30.
Let's routinely do that, yeah.
The only reason why that was on the agenda, Mr. Chair, and that is because we're doing that with all the committees of the county, is just to make sure that you still want to go forward with the fourth Thursday of the month as well.
Yeah. Well, good point. I mean, it should be reconsidered at least once a year. Well, look at it this way, it's 8 o'clock somewhere.
8:30 somewhere too.
Can't get ahead of you. You sure you don't want to be chairman?
No.
I could resign.
I like to give you a hard time.
We could do a motion to reconsider, probably. Anything else? What about next month now, which will be June 27th at 8:30? We know we'll have at least one thing on the agenda because we kicked it down the road today. Is there any reason?
I have a very sensitive mic. I only have to slightly touch it and it goes on and off. Pardon me. We have a couple items in addition to the one that was carried over, and we're anticipating another solar project, a smaller one, and a variance in the Riverway for a property in Troy.
Any reason to think we might need more than one day? Doesn't look like it, does it?
Any more of the solar deals will be the shining example of the state.
Ooh. On that happy note, it is my pleasure to declare us adjourned.